Chapter 1958. The ancient dragon empress felt like her horizons had been broadened. This was way too much. Sure enough, the owner had the same kind of weapon. The owner could manipulate lightning, control lightning. This mirror could reflect lightning. Everyone was marveling at the miraculous power of the mirror, but they were also struck by an indescribable sense of elation. Everyone present was submissive to the lightning tribulation. No matter how many bolts of lightning struck down, they had to endure it silently. How could they have the chance to counterattack? But now, no matter how much chaotic divine lightning fell, the vermilion bird was going to return the favor. How soul-stirring was this? How shocking was this? Shui Zhantian was already beyond excited. Idiom, the ancient dragon empress, had even attained a new type of heaven-crushing true intent from the vermilion bird mirror's performance. All of the other vermilion birds also fell into deep thought. The chaotic divine lightning falling from the tribulation clouds became more and more powerful, but all of them were reflected without exception. In the end, a bolt of chaotic divine lightning that was so terrifying that it seemed as if it could destroy the world roared and struck down. However, it was still rebounded and shot into the sky, directly tearing apart all the tribulation clouds within a radius of several thousand miles. This earth-shattering tribulation ceremony finally came to an end amidst the disgruntled roars of thunder. Everyone looked up at the vermilion bird mirror with astonishment in their eyes. The vermilion bird mirror's intricate crimson frame was completely unscathed, and its surface was still as smooth and flawless as ever. The aura emanating from its body had become ethereal and otherworldly, as if it were not something from this world. Enlin waved a hand, and the vermilion bird mirror wobbled before flying into Enlin's palm. It was still warm to the touch, and there were faint bolts of lightning flashing within the frame, exuding a chaotic aura. "Little vermilion bird, are you all right?" Enlin asked with a concerned expression. "I'm fine. I successfully transcended the tribulation." "Thank you, idiot." Big Brother and the vermilion bird mirror was going to refer to Enlin as idiot, but it felt like it was a little inappropriate to refer to him as such, so it immediately switched to Big Brother and, "What the hell is Big Brother?" Enlin's expression darkened. "Ahem, you must have heard wrong. It's Big Brother," the vermilion bird mirror replied. It was in a very good mood after leveling up, and its tone became a lot more relaxed. Enlin no longer bothered about this matter. He asked curiously, "Now that you have undergone your tribulation, you should have leveled up, right? What level of treasure is it?" The vermilion bird mirror thought to itself for a moment before replying, "I'm not sure, but I should be able to defend against a God of Creation stage attack." Enlin's chest tightened. "Isn't that obvious? Haven't you blocked the chaos divine lightning countless times? Let me ask you, how many God of Creation stage attacks can you block?" He knew that the vermilion bird mirror could reflect enemy spell techniques, but it could only do so once per battle, so he was quite concerned about the number of times it could be reflected. A smug expression appeared on the vermilion bird mirror's face. "After my breakthrough, I can unleash an infinite number of attacks based on the power of my enemies. In other words, I can reflect an enemy's power of a certain element countless times." Hiss, Enlin took a deep breath, and a brilliant light burst forth from his eyes. Was he really that awesome? Wouldn't that be the same as rebounding to death? He inexplicably thought of the pitiful lightning tribulation. Wasn't it because it was rebounded by the sparrow that it was unwilling and angry? In the end, it was struck by its own lightning and ended in tragedy. All of the disciples and elders offered their congratulations. Congratulations to classmate Enlin for successfully transcending the tribulation. Congratulations to sect leader Enlin. Congratulations to sect leader Enlin for his mirror. Everyone offered their congratulations. They swore that this was the strangest congratulations they had ever received. Enlin's expression remained unchanged as a faint smile appeared on his face. "I'm so envious. Even your weapon can transcend the tribulation. Why can't my dragon sparrow sword do the same? Little Xiaolan sidled up to Enlin and blinked her bright eyes with a burning desire to explore. She suddenly had a bold idea. How about I feed my essential power and essential Tao blood to my dragon sparrow sword and see what happens? She was a vermilion bird herself, so she felt like she could emulate the former great Empress Vermilion Bird. Don't. Enlin immediately panicked upon hearing this. You're still growing. How can you do something that's detrimental to your physical and mental health? Besides, the Vermilion Bird Mirror is a special artifact that was refined by the Vermilion Bird for over 10,000 years. It's different from the Dragon Sparrow Sword, so don't copy it. Enlin put a stop to little Xiaolan's bold idea. After a series of heated discussions, everyone left with surging emotions. They felt like they could brag about what they had experienced today for the rest of their lives. Have you ever seen a weapon transcend a chaotic divine lightning tribulation? I have. And I even saw the weapon reflect the chaotic divine lightning and blast through the lightning clouds with my own eyes. They felt like this was a scene that would be recorded in the annals of tribulation transcendence on the Tai-Chu continent and would be admired by countless powerful beings of the future. Emperor Ziwei sighed with emotion as he watched Enlin send off all of his friends. He had come to return his weapon, but Enlin had just shown him a weapon transcending a tribulation? Wasn't he being a little too King enthusiastic? Mr. Enlin, congratulations. Your Vermilion Bird Mirror is probably the most powerful weapon in this world. Emperor Ziwei offered his congratulations. He had forged so many weapons, but he had never seen anything as monstrous as the Vermilion Bird Mirror. No, my little Xie is the most powerful weapon in my heart. Enlin immediately refuted Emperor Ziwei's words and stroked the black sword on his back with a wistful expression. Evil slaying sword. F***ck off. Emperor Ziwei faltered upon hearing this before an indescribable sense of bitterness welled up in his heart. That's right, the evil-slaying sword was an unimaginably powerful weapon. Just the fact that it could inflict special damage upon heavenly gods and destroy the laws of this world indicated that it was no ordinary weapon. At the very least, it wasn't as simple as it appeared to be. Speaking of which, Enlin had taken this evil-slaying sword from his mystic realm. At the time, he had generously offered to give the evil-slaying sword to Enlin, but now that he thought about it, he was filled with regret. Enlin, I have a lot of work to do, so I'll be taking my leave now. Emperor Ziwei bowed. Hey, you're leaving already? Aren't you going to come for a meal? I have to thank you as well. Enlin immediately tried to persuade him to stay. We'll talk about that later. Farewell. Emperor Ziwei chuckled before tearing open a spatial rift and departing. F***ck, if he stayed here any longer, Enlin was going to continue to show off to his heart's content. Enlin heaved a faint sigh as he watched Emperor Ziwei leave. He then turned his attention back to his storage ring, which contained 2 special treasures. He had just used one of the special treasures to elevate his Vermilion Bird Mirror to a whole new level, which was a pleasant surprise to him. What kind of surprises would the other 2 treasures bring him? With this in mind, Enlin brought out one of the treasures. This was a dark gray disc with a diameter of about 10 feet. There were mysterious and complex veined patterns all over its surface, which were imbued with the power of the great Tao. There were 9 mysterious holes on its surface, all of which were evenly distributed around the edges of the disk, from which the power of nothingness emanated. Just from the energy fluctuations emanating from this divine tool, Enlin knew that this was a good thing. So, what exactly was it? A white light flashed through his eyes. Divine Inspection Technique. Chapter 1959. 9 Life Vital Disc. A Tao Art Disc condensed from the shattered Grand Taos of the universe. It requires 9 high-grade divine artifacts to fuse into the origin whole, and the 9 lives return to one in order to activate its supreme might. When Enlin saw the information that appeared in his mind, His eyes widened in surprise. 9 high-grade divine artifacts? The 8 divine artifacts inside the Vermilion Bird treasury were all high-grade divine artifacts. Was it a coincidence? Or could it be that the former Great Empress Vermilion Bird wanted to place those 8 divine tools into the 9 life vital disk? This also explained why the Great Empress Vermilion Bird's extravagant genes didn't apply to her at all. So this guy wanted to gather a divine artifact to activate the 9 life primordial plate? In the end, he had only managed to gather 8 of them when his Tao collapsed, and Lin felt that he had discovered the truth. High-rank divine tools were all extremely rare treasures, and even gods of creation wouldn't be able to gather all 9 of them at once. They would definitely have to search for and refine them for a very long time. And Lin couldn't help but turn his attention to the 8 newly obtained divine weapons. The Heart of 10,000 Incarnations, the Red Dancing Divine Sword, the Infernal Dragon Saber Bone, the Necromancy Divine Staff, the Extreme Divine Heavenly Saber, the Chaos Armor, the Black Origin Divine Spear, and the Extreme Star. Divine artifacts all had different attributes. The only thing they had in common was that the ripples they emitted were very strong, so much so that they could even be described as terrifying. The grade of their artifacts was definitely top-notch in the Myriad world. Only by putting in 9 top-notch god artifacts will one be qualified to activate the 9 life vital disk? What exactly is this 9 life essence plate? It's so awesome. And Lin's curiosity was piqued. Even the divine inspection technique didn't specify what the 9 life vital disk was used for. All it did say was that it could activate a supreme power. This evaluation was so high that there was no end to it, but he didn't seem to have any spare high-grade divine artifacts, right? The Karma Star Protection Divine Disc was at the pinnacle of all divine tools, but it was still guarding Earth with the Rabbit Maiden. This was an extremely important matter, so he couldn't spare it for now. After a period of nourishment, the evil-slaying sword had become an intermediate-rank divine tool. It had limitless potential and a lot of room for improvement, but it was still not a high-rank divine tool. In that case, where could he find a suitable divine weapon? And Lin was caught in a dilemma. He carefully rummaged through his storage ring to find that there really wasn't a treasure of this level. A high-grade divine artifact, why don't I ask someone else for one? I have money anyway. And Lin's eyes gradually lit up. Yes, money can solve all problems. And Lin first contacted Emperor Ziwei through a voice transmission talisman. Hey, and Lin, we've only been apart for a short while. What do you want? Emperor Ziwei asked cautiously. Facing An Lin at this moment, he was a little afraid that the other party would play tricks in front of him again. However, he was now in the Celestial Court. No matter how much the other party showed off, he wouldn't be able to show off to him, right? I want a high-grade divine tool. Do you have it? An Lin asked. Emperor Ziwei was given a fright by An Lin's words. High-grade god artifact? Where would I find a weapon of this level? Aren't you the #1 tool refiner in the Kingdom of the 9 States? You don't even have a high-rank god artifact? Emperor Ziwei's chest tightened and he snapped. An Lin, do you think high-rank divine tools are Debai's cup of tea? Do you think you can just because you say you have it? There aren't many divine tools of this level even in the entire Tai Chu continent. Even if there are, they're all in the hands of the most powerful beings. But you're the #1 tool refiner in the Kingdom of the 9 States. An Lin muttered to himself. Emperor Ziwei, I am the #1 tool refiner in the Kingdom of the 9 States, but I'm poor, I have money. How about you forge one for me in a month? An Lin pressed. He thought about it for a moment. The final battle would take place in about a month. Emperor Ziwei's chest tightened as he sensed An Lin's aura of extravagance. An Lin, I'll tell you the truth. Forging divine tools, especially high-rank ones, is not something that can be done with money. Even if you have money, you still have to find the right materials, the right location, and countless years of forging. It's unrealistic to forge a high-rank divine tool in a month, and it's even more unrealistic to forge one in 100 years. If you give me 10,000 years, I can take my time and try to forge one, but there's no guarantee that I'll succeed. I'll have to expend countless resources as well as an incredible opportunity. Unlin became more and more unhappy as he listened. You can't forge one even if I give you 5 billion? Emperor Ziwei's hand trembled upon hearing this, and he almost dropped his voice transmission talisman. So much money? How do you have so much money? His voice was trembling. Oh, I fought a battle and made some gains, Unlin replied indifferently. Emperor Ziwei clasped a hand over his chest. He was the #1 tool refiner in the Kingdom of the Nine States, and this was an extremely lucrative occupation. In the past, aside from the Celestial Dharch, Emperor Ziwei dared to guarantee that no one in the Kingdom of the Nine States was as wealthy as he was. That was, until he met Unlin. Emperor Ziwei was agitated. Under the dazzling light of Unlin, he suddenly felt like a poor C***T. What do you think? Can you forge one? Unlin was getting a little excited. You have a lot of spirit stones. If you give me enough time, I can indeed forge one, but a month is very difficult. Forgive me for being blunt, but no tool refiner on the Tai Chu continent can forge one. The only thing you can do is to buy one that's already available. Emperor Ziwei heaved a forlorn sigh. Emperor Ziwei expressed a sour expression of helplessness before ending the call with Unlin. Buy one that's already available. Unlin paused momentarily before turning toward the god of creation stage beings of the Tai Chu continent. At this moment, only the god of creation stage beings had the money and the ability to sell high-rank divine tools. The first person he thought of was the gentle and beautiful big sister Nuwa. Unlin immediately contacted Nuwa through a voice transmission talisman. The voice transmission talisman quickly picked up, and a voice as clear as a spring sounded from the other side. Unlin? How rare for you to contact me of your own volition. What do you want? Nuwa's voice was very pleasant. It was refreshing and natural, and it was extremely relaxing to listen to. Well, it's actually like this. I'm in need of a high-rank divine tool right now. Do you have any spare high-rank divine tools? I can buy them with spirit stones. Unlin was a little apologetic. Nuwa faltered slightly upon hearing this. Right at this moment, a clear and excited voice sounded from the other side of the voice transmission talisman. Senior Unlin, my yin and yang dual swords are high-rank divine tools. I'll give them to you. Slap. Little Bai, calm down. Those are your life weapons. Are you out of your mind to give them to that B********? A cold and enraged voice cut off the sudden outburst. Unlin was initially excited, but he was also quite dejected. White Spirit Snake still loved him so much, but Black Spirit Snake still hated him just as much. Is it very important? Nuwa's voice sounded again. It's a little important. If I can collect 8 of them, I'll be able to summon something extremely powerful with just one more. That should be beneficial to my growth in power. Unlin didn't try to hide anything. Nuwa's voice trembled slightly. You already have 8 high-rank divine tools. That's right. I'm so worried about the last one. I don't have any requirements as long as it's a high-rank divine tool. I can accept any divine tool, Unlin replied with a distressed expression. Nuwa's voice became a little more solemn. If you really want it, I know of a high-rank divine tool that you can summon. However, it belongs to my friend, so I can only buy it with money. It's quite expensive, and I'm afraid you won't be able to afford it. How many spirit stones? Unlin was getting quite nervous. His entire family's assets could barely amount to 6 billion spirit stones. If it really was more expensive than 6 billion, Nuwa replied. 2 billion. Unlin faltered upon hearing this. So cheap? Chapter 1960. What is it? Do you not have enough money? Nuwa asked in a gentle voice upon discovering that Unlin had fallen silent. Can you make it any cheaper? Unlin blinked as he tried to bargain. Nuwa heaved a forlorn sigh. I can't. This is the best price I can offer. But that's all right. If you don't need much money, I can lend it to you. No need, I'll find a way to get the money. When can I deliver the goods? Unlin immediately refused Nuwa's offer. He was already owing Nuwa a favor by asking her to help him purchase the divine tool, and it would be far too embarrassing to borrow money from her. Besides, he didn't really need money. How about this? I'll get Black Spirit Snake to deliver the divine tool to the 4-9 Immortal Sect, and you can give the spirit stones to her. I'll go borrow the divine tool now. Just wait for a few days, Nuwa said. Unlin expressed his gratitude toward Nuwa. The divine tool issue was finally resolved. Just as Unlin was patiently waiting for the divine tool, another piece of good news arrived. Fanny did not disappoint and successfully delivered 3 of the Pill Sage's divine pills to him. In addition to the 8 divine pills in his storage ring, he had a total of 11 divine pills. Among them, 5 were healing pills, 3 were explosive pills, and the other 3 were special pills that could enhance one's strength and constitution. Unlin looked at the 3 divine pills that could enhance one's strength and constitution. A Dragon God Tyrannical Body pill focused on refining the body and could greatly increase the strength of the body. One Extreme Darkness God Sealing pill could significantly enhance one's consciousness and increase one's ability to comprehend the power of darkness. One Ninefold Lotus Yin Yang pill could harmonize one's body with the great Tao of Yin and Yang, allowing one to observe life and perfect coordination of all aspects of one's body. The results of the divine inspection technique were all very exaggerated. Unlin was a little perplexed. These divine pills could produce instant effects, so why didn't the great Empress Vermilion Bird just eat them? Why did she leave them in the treasure vault? Unlin had a lot of free time now, so he began to ponder the questions in his mind. He looked at the divine pills in his storage ring, and he soon discovered something that astonished him. He discovered that the aura of the divine elixir inside was actually growing slowly. The rate of growth was very slow, and it was only increasing by about 100 millionth of the total amount per second. However, it was truly becoming stronger. That's strange. Could it be that divine pills can naturally become stronger? Unlin was confused. Or should I say, he pulled out a divine pill and isolated it from his storage ring. In the end, the divine elixir's aura stopped increasing. Unlin came to a realization, and he cast his gaze toward the 3rd and final special treasure in the storage ring. It was an irregular palm-sized crimson stone. The stones would shine, just like the stars on the ground. The most special thing was that every time it emitted a red light, it seemed to be brighter than before. Although the increase in brightness was very weak, Unlin still noticed it. Unlin pulled the stone out of his storage ring, upon which he discovered that the aura of the 10 divine pills in his storage ring had stopped increasing, but the aura of the divine pill outside was slowly increasing. So it's because of this stone? Unlin's pupils contracted slightly as he picked up the red stone and examined it closely. Could it be that the previous great Empress Vermilion Bird placed the divine pills together with this stone in order to increase the efficacy of the divine pills? A white glow flashed past his eyes, and he activated his divine inspection technique again. A string of information appeared in his mind. Chaotic Evolution Stone. Immediately afterward, there was no further explanation. The divine inspection technique could only identify names. Chaotic Evolution Stone? It can actually make divine pills evolve. However, why can't divine tools evolve? Why can't immortal pills evolve? Unlin was confused. This stone was the biggest stone in the mystery. He felt like this stone was also the most precious treasure of the Vermilion Bird. The more the divine inspection technique failed to identify, the more terrifying the origin of the treasure. After all, the great Empress Vermilion Bird had been the Holy Birth Vermilion Bird for countless years. Furthermore, she was so powerful that even though she was severely wounded, she could still fight on par with Enlin and Su Xiaolan. With such an awesome existence, it would be unreasonable if it didn't have an awesome treasure. The chaotic evolution stone definitely had an extraordinary origin. Enlin nodded slightly. He brought out an immortal rank red rope and hung the stone like a pendant. He felt like since this stone could make divine pills evolve, perhaps it could also make him evolve? Although this was an absurd thought, what if it worked? He used all sorts of methods to probe the chaotic evolution stone, but he came up empty-handed. Aside from slowly making the aura of divine pills more abundant, there was no other use for it. So be it. I'll take my pills first. Enlin humphed coldly. A great battle was imminent, and Enlin didn't lack those few days of time to evolve his divine pills. He picked up the Dragon God Tyrannical Body Pill, the Extreme Darkness God Sealing Pill, and the Ninefold Lotus Yin-Yang Pill. These were 3 extremely precious divine pills, and he swallowed them all. Boom! A terrifying medicinal power exploded within his body. This was an extremely pure and rich power. All of a sudden, the roar of a dragon god erupted from the 4-9 immortal sect. A dark wind swept forth, and it was as if hell had descended upon this world. Countless lotus flowers extended toward the sun, creating a scene of boundless profundity. All sorts of extravagant phenomena alarmed the entire sect. When the disciples and elders hurried over to see who was responsible for this phenomenon, all of them were struck by a sense of frustration. It was Enlin again. Their sect leader rarely returned to the sect, so why couldn't he just calm down a little? Everyone's thoughts were very complicated. Although they were a little speechless at this kind of life, looking at their Lord sect leader who was crazily absorbing the medicinal energy of the elixir and releasing a terrifying aura, they felt a little more at ease. Their Lord sect leader was getting more and more awesome. An entire day passed. Enlin had only just completely absorbed the power of the 3 divine pills. He looked at the changes taking place in his body with elation. His body of the war god, which he had thought was already at the pinnacle, had improved significantly again. For some reason, a naturally terrifying dragon might have appeared within his body. As for his consciousness, perhaps it was because he was extremely compatible with the power of darkness, but the power of the pills was completely absorbed, and he successfully attained the power of the divine dark realm. His god of creation stage consciousness had been further refined, and its purity and volume had both increased by about 1/10. This was already quite impressive. Meanwhile, the Ninefold Lotus Yin-Yang Pill allowed all of the powers in his body to circulate more smoothly and harmoniously, which was also a significant improvement in his battle prowess. Enlin opened his eyes, and a confident smile appeared on his face. I am no longer who I used to be. I am no longer who I used to be either. A clear and pleasant voice sounded from behind him. Enlin turned around, and his expression became one of astonishment. Before him stood a 1.3-meter-tall lowly in a jade dress. She had bright eyes and white teeth, and her skin was translucent and flawless. Her figure was also extremely exquisite, and she was extremely pleasing to the eye. Xiaolan. Enlin was astonished. Little Xiaolan's pink lips curled up slightly, and she appeared beautiful and natural, yet also captivating. She smiled. Today, it's Jiu Sui Lan who greets you. Do you like it? Enlin looked at the unforgettable smile before him, and he nodded slowly. I do. Chapter 1961. Enlin was suddenly struck by a strange feeling as he looked at the adorable Lolita before him. What are you looking at? Little Xiaolan could sense Enlin's scorching gaze, and she clasped her hands behind her back as she swayed her petite body from side to side. I feel like I've grown up with you, and I can see what you were like in the past. I can see what you were like in the past, and I can see what your personality was like in the past. We've grown up together, haven't we? Enlin's eyes lit up. Little Xiaolan faltered momentarily before standing on her tiptoes and patting Enlin's head with a smile. Childhood sweethearts are just two friends who grew up together. Unlin, you haven't grown any younger, so you're just an uncle and a Lolita at most. Unlin, this sect leader isn't too cold? Unlin was speechless upon hearing this. That did seem to be the case. However, it was still quite a good deal to be able to interact with Su Xiaolan of all ages. Unlin held onto little Xiaolan's little hand. Let's go and see if those vermilion birds are obedient. Little Xiaolan wore a green dress, and her smooth, well-proportioned legs peeked out from beneath her dress in a flawless manner. Her voice was crisp, and a faint smile appeared on her face. Today is the day they're going to test the fruits of their cultivation. I'm also looking forward to it. That's right, after a week of studying the heaven-crushing true intent, it was time for the vermilion birds to test the fruits of their cultivation. The ancient dragon empress was feeling quite uneasy. She felt like these vermilion birds were the worst batch she had ever taught. After all the vermilion birds were talking about the great Empress Vermilion Bird, but they had no intention of crushing the heaven-crushing true intent at all. What a waste of such a high cultivation base. The test begins now. Use your heaven-crushing techniques to attack me. There's no need to hold back. The ancient dragon empress stood on the grassland with one hand in front of her and the other behind her. She was tall and slender, and her dragon robe made her appear quite dashing and elegant. Boom, boom, boom. Balls of domineering holy flames soared into the sky. Wah! For great Empress Vermilion Bird. So what? Those who stand in our way must be slain. Enemies of the great Empress Vermilion Bird. Kill, kill, kill. Charge. The vermilion bird flew toward the ancient dragon empress. The holy flames were imbued with extremely fearsome heaven-crushing true intent, as if they were going to destroy everything in their path. All those who stood in great Ant Vermilion Bird's path of Empress would have to die. This intent was rooted in their bloodlines, every cell in their bodies, and even their path of Tao. The ancient dragon Empress suddenly came to her senses. She thought back to how crazy Cassidy and Merlin had been for Enlin's blood. That's right, for the sake of the incomparably intense faith in his heart, he had to make his faith directly connect with the heaven-crushing true intent, which in turn could enhance the strength of the heaven-crushing true intent. What about the faith of the bootlicker vermilion birds? Their faith in the great Empress Vermilion Bird was deeply engraved into their bloodlines and their Tao realm. It represented the holiest, noblest, and proudest faith in this world. In terms of faith, none of the living beings in the world could compare to the Vermilion Bird tribe, let alone the 6 Vermilion Bird sages, who possessed unfathomable cultivation bases and had been blessed by Xiaolan. In that instant, the ancient dragon empress felt like she could see 9 suns crashing down upon her. The terrifying temperature even caused space to distort and crack. How could this be? The ancient dragon empress expression shifted drastically as heaven-crushing true intent surged around her body. Boom, boom, boom. The suns exploded. The heavens tremored and the earth tremored. The surrounding grass and soil were instantly incinerated into wisps of smoke by the extremely high temperatures. An apocalyptic might erupted forth in a frenzy, threatening to engulf everything in this world. Enlin was given a fright upon seeing this, and he immediately unleashed a spatial barrier to prevent the shockwaves from spreading to the 4-9 immortal sect. An unimaginable scene appeared on the plains of the fallen phoenix once again. 9 suns of different colors exploded violently as holy flames swelled relentlessly. The flames disappeared just as quickly as they came. Soon, the 9 vermilion birds reappeared on the plains. All around them was a vast expanse of pitch-black darkness, and all matter had been incinerated. The ancient dragon empress stood before them with her clothes in tatters. Her delicate skin had been charred black, and she panted heavily. I told you to attack, not all at once. The ancient dragon empress looked like she was about to throw up blood. The vermilion birds faltered slightly upon hearing this before becoming embarrassed. Teacher, how about we attack one by one now? No. There's no need. The ancient dragon empress body shuddered, and she immediately shook her head. You've all graduated. You've all perfectly infused your faith into your heaven-crushing true intent and unleashed extremely powerful heaven-crushing powers. It's no exaggeration to say that you've already become the first in the heaven-crushing sect, second only to heavenly disciple candidates. The ancient dragon empress sighed with emotion and elation. As the fourth heavenly disciple, the ancient dragon empress was very elated. She had initially thought that these vermilion birds were quite mediocre and didn't possess enough heaven-crushing intent. However, only after trying did she discover that their heaven-crushing techniques were ridiculously powerful. With the addition of these super mighty figures, the power of the heaven-crushing sect received another massive boost. The ancient dragon empress was very elated, but Enlin and Little Lon furrowed their brows. Enlin wore a dejected expression. So these vermilion birds can't even reach the level of heavenly disciple candidates? Little Lon shook her head. I'm so disappointed. Why did I bring you here? To think that you can't even reach the level of heavenly disciple candidates. There are a total of 9 Tao integration stage super mighty figures, but not a single one. The 9 vermilion birds instantly sprawled to the ground and sobbed with shame. We're sorry, great Empress Vermilion Bird. We're useless. We've brought shame upon you. What? Please don't doubt our resolve. I'm willing to die as an apology. All of the vermilion birds yelled in unison with expressions of humiliation. Ancient Dragon Empress. Did they have some sort of misunderstanding about heavenly disciple candidates? Was it really that easy to become a heavenly disciple? It was already very bad *SS to become a heavenly disciple. What was this humiliation about not becoming a heavenly disciple? The ancient dragon empress had received an invisible blow. What kind of people were the students of the 4-9 immortal sect? Teacher, is it my turn yet? Bai Xiaohu stared at the ancient dragon empress with anticipation etched on her face. Her round eyes were especially bright and adorable. The ancient dragon empress was quite relieved. She still had adorable students. Look, this little white tiger didn't follow the vermilion birds. How disciplined! The ancient dragon empress heaved a sigh of relief. She repressed her injuries and changed into a new set of clothes before speaking in a slow voice. Come! Bai Xiaohu's gentle expression suddenly became sinister. Roar! True love is invincible. I'll eat you. Roar! At the 4-9 immortal sect, within the Purple Star Pavilion Sanatorium, the ancient dragon empress lay on her bed with a resigned expression. Big Sister Bai Ling looked after the ancient dragon empress with a gentle smile. Don't worry, she'll be able to get out of bed after a few days of rest. Enlin, Little Lon, Bai Xiaohu, and the vermilion birds stood beside her with flowers in their hands. They were touched, grateful, and guilty. This was their mighty teacher. Chapter 1962. Charge! Die. Buddha is merciful. All of the monk soldiers began to chant Buddhist mantras. Golden energy shot forth like countless golden arrows, falling upon the Heavenly Human Tribe United Nations Army. The Heavenly Human Tribe United Nations soldiers flapped their wings and constantly changed directions in midair to evade the oncoming golden light, or they swung their weapons through the air to shatter the oncoming golden light before quickly closing in and slicing the monk soldiers in half. The monk soldiers were not to be outdone, either, and they were able to smash the heads of the Heavenly Human Tribe United Nations soldiers with their Buddhist staffs. This was a battle between the Heavenly Human Tribe and the Buddhist Kingdom of the West. The battle raged on, and blood splattered all over the ground. After the Southern Heavenly Gate and Northern Heavenly Gate had been destroyed, the Heavenly Human Tribe only had 3 Heavenly Gates left, and they were at a temporary disadvantage. The monk soldiers and the Heavenly Human Tribe United Nations soldiers could already see the boundless white nectar sea, as well as the divine tree at the center of the white nectar sea. Soon, we're almost at the enemy's main gate. A burst of mighty power suddenly descended from the sky. Whoosh! Before the monk soldiers had a chance to come to their senses, a silvery white light flashed for several hundred kilometers, slicing the ground in half. Over 10,000 monk soldiers didn't even have a chance to react before they were reduced to particles by the light. All those who pass through here will die. An exquisitely beautiful woman in a white robe with a pair of pristine white wings on her back stood at the forefront of the monk soldier army with a silver longsword in her hand. It's Great General Water Lotus of the Heavenly Human Tribe. Did she finally show up? She's just a great general. The Heavenly Human Tribe is on the back foot, but don't be afraid. Follow us. All of the monk soldiers' hearts jolted upon hearing this, but they still charged forward with all their might. Reckless fools. Heavenly reincarnation / The woman harumphed coldly as she slashed her silvery white longsword through the air, upon which a holy light converged and fell upon the monk soldier army like a crescent moon. This strike encompassed an area with a radius of over 50 kilometers, and if it struck, tens of thousands of monk soldiers would be annihilated. Immeasurable golden hand, an almighty and boundless compassionate voice sounded. The giant golden hand that contained the true meaning of the Buddhist Tao suddenly appeared in the void. Like pinching a small biscuit, it directly crushed the incomparably sharp crescent arc. Then, before Martial Water Lotus could react, a giant golden palm had already appeared in front of her. Moreover, it was extremely fast and it instantly enveloped the world. There was nowhere to hide. Bang! Martial Water Lotus' defense was broken in the blink of an eye, and she was heavily injured by a single palm strike, sending her flying for hundreds of kilometers. Amitabha! Amitabha Buddha is here! The monk soldiers cheered excitedly. Amitabha was one of the 3 saints of the Western Paradise, and possessed the power of the Path Integration stage. His appearance could be said to have stunned the entire battlefield. The Amitabha Buddha didn't feel the slightest bit complacent after severely wounding the Heavenly Human Tribe Great General with a single palm strike. His worried gaze pierced through the void and landed on the Heavenly Divine Tree. No matter how he used his divine ability to probe, the top of the Divine Tree was still shrouded in fog, and he couldn't see through it. Although he had fought his way to the Celestial Clan's gate, he was still uncertain. What was at the top of the Tree of God? In the westernmost region of the Tai Chu continent. In the vast and boundless West Sea. Dark clouds enshrouded the realm of death, and lightning crackled. An inky black hole had appeared on the surface of the sea, and boundless seawater was pouring into the hole, but no matter what, it was unable to fill up the hole. Over 1,000 kilometers away from the hole, there was an observation tower. 2 powerful mermaids were surveying the hole in the distance. As usual, the hole was still absorbing seawater at an insane rate. From here, this hole really does look like the eye of a demon. A black-skinned mermaid leaned against the railing of the observation tower and peered into the distance. The boundless ocean there had suddenly caved in, and it was an inky black abyss that was strangely mesmerizing to the onlookers. The other mermaid heaved a forlorn sigh. What eye of a demon? It's clearly the mouth of a demon that can engulf everything. I'm really worried that the entire West Sea is going to be engulfed by it. This was no exaggeration. The sea level of the West Sea had already dropped by over 60 meters, revealing a vast expanse of seashore. In the history of the West Sea, there had never been a situation where the sea level had dropped by more than 10 meters. Now, it had dropped by several dozen meters, so where had all the seawater gone? So be it. The black-skinned mermaid was quite open-minded. Even sect leader Anlin and alliance leader Lan Xiaoni were unable to do anything to the Heavenly Sea God. If the Heavenly Sea God really does appear, it'll most likely be our doomsday. Haven't we already resolved ourselves to this? I've resolved myself, but I still don't want to die. The other mermaid said in a slow voice, I hope that day will come later so that I can enjoy more peaceful days. It sighed with emotion before lying down on its chair again. It picked up the cup on the table and downed a mouthful of West Sea beer before looking up into the sky with a dejected expression. Slap, slap, slap. It was suddenly slapped on the shoulder a few times. "What are you doing? Don't interrupt my life as a fish," the mermaid roared. "No, that's not it." The black-skinned mermaid's voice trembled slightly. "What I want to say is that the day you speak of has most likely already arrived," the fishman exploded. He stared at the empty space in the distance with his eyes wide open. The dark clouds in the sky quickly dissipated, and sunlight shone on the sea. 999 brilliant rainbows, like a rainbow bridge in the sky, shot into the sky from all directions of the West Sea, and then gathered above the black hole. The rhythm of the great Tao in the sky shook in unison, transforming into supreme, immortal laws that surged. The boundless ocean surged and roared, the seabed plates trembled, and the undersea volcanoes erupted. They were all expressing their joy, as if they were passionately welcoming their owner. At the same time, a beam of divine light with countless colors shot into the dark hole, and the dark hole shrank at a speed visible to the naked eye. The merman was dumbfounded. "Quick! Hurry and contact Alliance Leader Lon!" the dark-skinned fishman shouted. "Highest alert! 4-9 Immortal Sec." Anlin held little Xiaolan in his left arm and Dabai in his right arm, as he sat on a chair and enjoyed Yi Ling's massage technique. He felt as if he had reached the pinnacle of his life. Little Gu had also transformed into a gentle young woman in a colorful dress, and she placed one spirit fruit after another into Anlin's mouth in an extremely meticulous manner. At this moment, a spatial rift suddenly appeared in the air. An exquisitely beautiful woman in a black dress with waist-length hair appeared in the air above the 4-9 Immortal Sect before slowly flying toward the man on the ground below. "Anlin, Nuwa sent me here to deliver a divine tool to you," Black Spirit Snake spoke in a cold voice. As an errand runner, she had worked hard to rush over. In the end, she saw that the other party was actually living such an extravagant life. She could not help but feel suffocated and became even angrier. Her eyes were filled with deep disdain and contempt for the top capitalists. However, she was not in a good position to lash out. She had once sworn to beat up Anlin every time she saw Anlin, but she had also selectively forgotten about it. It wasn't that she didn't feel like it was inappropriate. It was just that she felt like she couldn't beat the man before her anymore. Reality was truly devastating. Chapter 1963. "Hey, little black, you're here. Come and have some spirit fruits to quench your thirst." Anlin waved excitedly at Black Spirit Snake with a warm and enthusiastic expression. Black Spirit Snake's lips twitched. He referred to her as Big Sister Black Spirit Snake when he was weak, but now that he was powerful, he was calling her Little Black? F***ck, she really wanted to cut him down. Black Spirit Snake repressed the urge to cut him down with her sword as she descended before Anlin. "This is the high-rank divine tool that Nuwa gave you, the Hong Meng Divine Shuttle." She flipped a hand over, and a divine shuttle exuding powerful divine power fluctuations appeared in her palm. A purple mist began to emanate from it in the form of energy particles, and the space around them began to collapse and cave in. Anlin's eyes lit up. "This is good stuff." He extended a hand toward it, but Black Spirit Snake grabbed onto the divine shuttle and took a step back with furrowed brows. "I'll give you the money, and I'll give you the goods." "Hee, are you worried that I don't have money?" Anlin chuckled. Who knows? 2 billion is a huge sum of money that even Tao integration stage super mighty figures can't afford. Don't even think about running away from your debt. Black Spirit Snake held onto the divine shuttle tightly as she looked at Anlin with a cautious expression. Anlin smiled and didn't say anything as his storage ring flashed. Boom! 500,000 vital stones instantly crashed to the ground. The earth tremored as vital energy swept through the air, and white light almost blinded Black Spirit Snake's eyes. These are all vital stones." Black Spirit Snake was astonished, and her breathing faltered for an instant. Each vital stone was worth 10,000 spirit stones, so these vital stones were worth at least 5 billion spirit stones. See, just the vital stones in my storage ring alone are enough to buy 2 or 3 of your divine shuttles. You think I don't have money? Unlin's lips curled up slightly. A blush appeared on Black Spirit Snake's face as she gritted her teeth. How can you be so rich? As long as you're powerful, you can too. Unlin smiled. Black Spirit Snake had suffered a second blow. This B** starred. Was this how he behaved whenever he was more powerful than her? Big Sister Black Spirit Snake, ignore him. Come, have some spirit fruits. Little Xiaolan pointed at the fruits on the table with a dainty smile. Black Spirit Snake was a little surprised to see the lowly beside Enlin. You're Su Xiaolan? That's right. Little Xiaolan nodded as she looked at Black Spirit Snake with a pair of pure and flawless eyes, as if she were a pure and innocent little girl. Black Spirit Snake's heart jolted slightly with shock. This was the person that Her Majesty Nuwa was referring to? It was really enviable and enviable luck, she sighed in her heart and accepted the 2 billion spirit stones. After handing the divine artifact to Enlin, she picked up the spirit fruit and ate it without hesitation. He had worked so hard to get here, so he had to pay for the delivery, right? Black Spirit Snake planned to eat her fill before going back. Enlin was quite elated to see this, and he pulled out a dozen or so precious high-rank spirit fruits from his storage ring before placing them on the table. Take your time. If you don't have enough, there are more here. Black Spirit Snake. Little Goo, I want to eat cloud crystal grapes, Enlin said in a lazy voice. Yes, master. The young woman in a colorful dress nodded before picking up a translucent white grape and placing it into Enlin's mouth in an extremely practiced manner. Enlin opened his mouth and began to eat in a lazy manner, as if he were an old man. Black Spirit Snake bit down on the spirit fruit in her mouth with disdain and disappointment in her eyes. She no longer had the chance to pummel Enlin, and she was very disappointed and indignant about not having the chance to do so. Sigh. Who would have thought that I would still end up becoming the kind of person I once hated the most? Life. Enlin looked up into the sky with a forlorn expression. A hint of surprise flashed through Black Spirit Snake's eyes. Was Enlin a little dumb? Don't think like that, Anen. No matter who you are, I'll always like you. Little Xiaolan didn't know why Enlin would suddenly say this, but she still offered words of consolation. Enlin shook his head. Sigh. I'm really confused. Why have I become the person I once hated the most? What's the point of living like this? Black Spirit Snake chuckled coldly. At least you know your place. Little Xiaolan. By the way, what kind of person did you hate the most? Enlin. Rich people. Little Xiaolan. Black Spirit Snake. Pfft. Yiling couldn't help but burst into laughter as she massaged Enlin from behind. She applied even more force, and Enlin grimaced in pain. Be gentle. Be gentle, my good disciple. Get to the point. Little Xiaolan chuckled coldly. Black Spirit Snake discovered that she couldn't even continue to scoop spirit fruits from Enlin. F***ck. Enlin was definitely the most cocky rich person she had ever seen, and she couldn't beat him up. I'm going now. Black Spirit Snake turned to leave. Hey, Little Black, there are still a lot of spirit fruits here. Have some. Enlin urged. I've been very busy lately. Bye. Black Spirit Snake left without even turning back. Enlin looked at her departing figure with a resigned expression. Why are all of you so busy? There hasn't been a war yet. Little Xiaolan looked at Enlin with a resigned expression. Do you really not know why everyone else is so busy? Enlin ignored Black Spirit Snake and held the high-rank divine tool, the Hong Meng divine shuttle, in his hand. This divine tool was no ordinary divine tool. Not only did it possess extremely powerful spatial piercing power, but it could even easily break through the barriers between worlds. It was a top-tier divine tool. He had spent 2 billion on this divine tool, so he had probably made a huge profit. Such a powerful divine tool is only one of the 9 items required to activate the 9 life vital disc. What kind of treasure is this 9 life vital disc? It's so bad *SS. And Lin's interest was piqued. After enjoying himself for a while, he found a grassy plain to tinker with his 9 life vital disc. And then, I've already set up a defensive formation. Don't worry, little Xiaolan yelled from afar. She could already use the power of the vermilion bird for a short period of time, so no one in the 4-9 immortal sect had the right to stand guard over her. And Lin was quite relieved to see this, and he brought out the gray disc that was about 10 feet wide. The disc was riddled with a series of complex veined patterns that were imbued with the power of the great Tao of heaven and earth. There were 9 mysterious holes on the disc that were evenly distributed around the edges of the disc, releasing the power of nothingness. And Lin brought out the 9 high-rank divine tools and placed them into the 9 holes. The divine tools would shrink as soon as they came into contact with the holes before being enshrouded by a white ball of energy. Hong Meng Divine Shuttle, Puppet Heart of 10,000 Forms, Hong Wu Divine Sword, Infernal Dragon Saber Bone, Undead Divine Staff, Divine Extreme Heavenly Saber, Chaotic Armor, Black Essence Divine Spear, and Extreme Star. 9 high-rank divine tools that would drive countless Tao integration stage super mighty figures crazy on the Taichu continent were all placed into the 9 life vital disc by Enlin. The divine light emanating from the divine tools began to flow along the veined patterns on the disc before converging at the center of the disc. Enlin was extremely excited. It was time to witness a miracle. Chapter 1964. Enlin could sense that the 9 high-rank divine tools before him seemed to have fused into one. The powers of the 9 divine tools converged together and fused together perfectly. A wisp of purplish-golden vital energy began to appear on the surface of the 9 life vital disc. This vital energy was imbued with boundless divine power and boundlessly profound Tao. Enlin was struck by a sense of déjà vu from the transformation of the disc's power. What was this power like? Enlin suddenly came to a realization. After attaining the phenomenal success stage of his body of the war god, he could use his 5 elemental body to fuse the perfected powers of the 5 elements together to create a brand new power. Was the power of the 9 high-rank divine tools powerful? It was extremely powerful. This was the ultimate power among weapons, and it couldn't be improved any further. This was just like his evergreen technique and Wings of True Fire cultivation method, which had been perfected and couldn't be improved any further. But was this the end? Not really. Power could be fused to create a new power. This 9 life vital disc created a new power, which was very similar to how his body of the war god created a new power. They were both powers that had reached the ultimate level to fuse and transform. The purplish-golden vital energy on the 9 life vital disc was the new power that was created by this disc. Su Xiaolan's brows furrowed slightly as she looked at the gaseous energy emanating from the disc, and her expression became a little grave. This power feels very strange when it appears in this world. Rumble in the sky above. Dark clouds suddenly began to gather. Lightning began to roar. Su Xiaolan raised her head, and her expression shifted slightly. It really is about to transcend a tribulation. Yi Ling and Little Gu also became quite nervous as they looked on. It was a weapon tribulation again. This was something that they couldn't normally encounter, but they were encountering it every other day now. It was also at this moment that a golden divine halo appeared above Enlin's head, exuding the purest lightning Tao realm. At the same time, a paramount aura began to proliferate outward. Enlin's entire body was bathed in golden lightning as he waved a hand toward the tribulation clouds in the sky. Disperse. What if you destroy my treasure? Bam! The tribulation clouds that had just materialized suddenly disappeared. The sky began to clear up. The sun shone upon little Xiaolan, Little Gu, and Yi Ling's dumbstruck expressions. Even the tribulation clouds disappeared? There was even such a thing. The vermilion bird mirror in her storage ring suddenly tremored lightly, as if it was protesting why Lin hadn't helped her fight her tribulation lightning. Buzz as the tribulation clouds dispersed. The 9 life vital plates' aura suddenly changed. It became ethereal, as if it had transcended the entire world and stood above all other powers. It was on a completely different level. Not only that, but Lin also discovered that he had a deeper connection with the 9 life vital plate. So, this is why it's called the 9 life origin plate. Lin sensed the connection between him and the 9 life vital plate, and a look of pleasant surprise appeared on his face. He stretched out his thumb and index finger and gently picked up a wisp of primordial chaos energy that seemed to be both gold and purple at the same time. It was as small as a needle, and then he gently tossed it to the ground. TSS, TSS, TSS. The sound of something melting could be heard. All of the plants on the ground, as well as the soil, were melted into wisps of purple-golden energy by a peculiar power before returning to nothingness. This was not a simple attack that destroyed something. Instead, it was an attack that made something return to the primordial energy that had existed at the beginning of the universe. A term suddenly occurred to Lin. A dimensional reduction attack. Now, the 9 life origin disk's attack method was exactly like this. By relying on the difference in level, it was able to drag the target into a completely new domain and crush them, directly melting them into a wisp of purple and gold grand mist energy. The only unfortunate thing was that this power didn't have the ability to spread. Otherwise, a wisp of purple-golden primordial chaos energy would be able to destroy an entire world. Lin, what's going on? Su Xiaolan flew over with a nervous expression. Wow. Is this Master's secret weapon? Where did you put all the stuff on the ground? Yi Ling's bright eyes widened as she stared at the massive crater in front of Lin. After reaching the return to void stage, she could even sense the movement of every single particle. However, after the energy released by Lin's 9 life vital plate blasted a massive crater into the ground, she was astonished to discover that even the most basic form of matter within the crater had disappeared, as if its very existence had been erased. The only thing that could be traced back to its source was that the wisp of purple-golden energy released by Lin seemed to have become a little richer, as if all matter had been assimilated into that wisp of purple-golden energy. After that, the purple-golden energy also disappeared. Or to put it more accurately, it transcended beyond this world, and could no longer be seen, Lin explained. This is purple-golden primordial chaos energy. It's a new type of energy created after the 9 life vital plate combined the powers of 9 high-rank divine tools. I don't dare to imagine just how bad *SS it is, but my body instinctively refuses to come into contact with this power. Su Xiaolan nodded in agreement. Me too. This power feels even more powerful than the vermilion bird essential power. Even Lin was given a fright upon hearing this. The vermilion bird essential power was already at the pinnacle of the realm of stars. Just what kind of terrifying thing had the former great Empress Vermilion Bird created? Just as Lin was about to continue exploring the 9 life vital plates' power, his voice transmission talisman suddenly lit up. Furthermore, it was flashing at a very rapid rate, clearly indicating that this was an urgent matter. Lin immediately accepted the call, and Lan Xiaoni's urgent voice sounded from the other end. Big Boss Lin, the heavenly sea god has appeared in the West Sea. Lan Xiaoni exclaimed in shock. Lin's expression also shifted. Why was this happening even earlier than what they had said? What's the situation like now? He asked. Has it attacked the West Sea Alliance? No, the heavenly sea god flew toward the western heavenly gate after emerging from the massive crater in the West Sea. It hasn't attacked us at all, Lan Xiaoni replied. Lin heaved a sigh of relief upon hearing this. It appeared that the heavenly sea god's cooperation with them could still continue. However, the weather in the West Sea has become extremely vile. Energy hurricanes, aurora lightning storms, underwater earthquakes, and terrifying tsunamis are constantly erupting. The West Sea Alliance's outer defensive line has basically been destroyed. Lan Xiaoni was a little enraged as she continued, "Our West Sea Alliance has lost at least 3 million soldiers. It's that vicious." Unlin's brows furrowed. Even though the Heavenly Sea God hadn't attacked them directly, this was far too violent. Didn't it know that the West Sea Alliance was an ally? "Don't be afraid, I'll come to the West Sea soon." Unlin made up his mind. "All right, I'll wait for you." Lan Xiaoni smiled. She ended the voice transmission. Unlin was just about to speak with Lan Xiaoni when the Celestial Larch also received urgent reports. The Heavenly Human Tribe on the Eastern Front had launched a massive attack. The largest battle in history had erupted, and the enemy had even mobilized heavenly gods. The Heavenly Human Tribe on the Central Front had also launched a massive counterattack. 3 heavenly gods had been mobilized at once, and the battling Buddha, Amitabha, and Mahastamaprapta Bodhisattva had been severely wounded and were in dire need of reinforcements. Unlin immediately announced that all members of the 4-9 Immortal sect would enter a state of emergency upon receiving this news. Unlin and Su Xiaolan then led the 9 vermilion birds toward the Central Front. The final battle was finally upon them. Chapter 1965. At the Eastern Heavenly Gate, 5 heavenly gods with halos above their heads looked at the boundless light before them with anticipation. There was a hint of excitement and eagerness in their eyes. "Are we finally going to start the final battle? Master Light, when are we going to attack? Crush them. Crush those ignorant humans. Slaughter those ants." All of the heavenly gods were filled with fighting spirit. At this moment, a holy and ethereal voice erupted throughout the entire Eastern Heavenly Gate. "The time to cleanse the Tai Chu continent has arrived. The human race will face its final judgment, and all those who stand in our way must die. I hereby announce the official commencement of the final battle." All of the heavenly gods roared in unison as extremely terrifying auras erupted forth toward the Eastern Front. On the Eastern Front, the most powerful stronghold of the Kingdom of the 9 States Army, Chun Shi City. There were already over 50 million cultivators gathered here. Following the liberation of the Northern Heavenly Gate and Southern Heavenly Gate, the Kingdom of the 9 States United Army had expanded even further. Not only did they possess the full power of the Kingdom of the 9 States, but they also possessed the full power of the Spirit Lake Realm and the Snow Maidens. There were 20 Tao integration stage super mighty figures among them. This was a force that could crush any place. However, in the face of the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army on the Eastern Front, they were feeling extremely pressured. Not taking into account anything else, just the 5 heavenly gods were enough to make their flesh crawl. Furthermore, it was said that even the paramount heavenly god, the Heavenly Light Goddess, was about to make a move. If it weren't for the fact that the heavenly disciples of the heaven-crushing sect were on the same side as them in the land of eternal light, they really wouldn't have the courage to face such a terrifying force. The Celestial Larch stood atop the city wall of Dawn City and looked down at the vast heavenly human tribe army in the distance. His brows furrowed as he looked down at the divine light radiating from those beings. "Celestial Larch, have Enlin and the others made a move?" Emperor Ziwei stood beside the Celestial Larch and asked. The Celestial Larch nodded. "Enlin and Su Xiaolan will reinforce the Central Front and the Western Front. The rest of the 4-9 Immortal sect will reinforce the Eastern Front." Emperor Chang Xing faltered upon hearing this. "I heard that the situation on the Central Front is extremely dire. The paramount heavenly earth god seems to have moved to the Central Front, and the heaven-crushing sect is on the Eastern Front. Are they really going to reinforce the Eastern Front with just the 2 of them? Don't look down on my master." At that moment, a handsome young man in a black robe walked out from the side with a confident smile on his face. "Daoist Xiaozi. Emperor Chang Xing greeted with a smile. The Celestial Dharch and Emperor Ziwei also greeted him warmly. Xiao Zhe was now a Dao integration stage true dragon and was on equal footing with the 5 emperors of the Celestial Court. Xiao Tu also made his way over to them at this moment. My master has become far more powerful than he was last seen. Just from his combat prowess alone, he has already transcended beyond the Dao integration stage. Xiao Tu's voice was tinged with a hint of smugness and pride. In the past, he had no choice but to acknowledge Enlin as his master. But now, he was sincerely proud to have such a master. To be able to become the disciple of such a powerful person was simply a huge profit. Not only has my master transcended the Dao integration stage, but my master's wife has also transcended the Dao integration stage. I feel like if she were to fight, she would also be able to unleash God of Creation stage combat prowess. Yi Ling made her way over to Enlin with a firm expression. The 3 emperors of the Celestial Court were astonished to hear this. They knew that the 4-9 immortal sect loved to brag about their masters. But now, they were bragging about Enlin and Su Xiaolan to God of Creation stage combat prowess? Were they trying to elevate the 4-9 immortal sect to the point where they could completely dominate the Celestial Court? Ha ha! If Enlin and Su Xiaolan really are as powerful as you say they are and possess God of Creation stage combat prowess, then that would be a great blessing for our human race. Emperor Chang Xing chortled with glee, but even he didn't believe what he was saying. On the central front of the Heavenly Human Tribe United Nations, this place had already become a meat grinder. The paramount power of the Holy Martial Clan, the Holy Palace of Martial Dao, was keeping all of the beasts in the sinister spirit beast cesspool at bay. Near the White Nectar Sea, the Heavenly Human Tribe, Creation Realm, Western Dragon Tribe, and Void Spirit Realm United Army was engaged in a fierce battle against the Buddhist Kingdom, Holy Paradise, and Demonic Realm United Army. Hundreds of millions of living beings were engaged in a frenzied battle that stretched for over 100,000 kilometers. The energy fluctuations unleashed by their battles triggered all types of terrifying natural disasters, as if they were threatening to destroy the entire world. Due to the fact that the Heavenly Human Tribe had 3 heavenly gods among their ranks, the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army was forced into retreat, and they were also suffering extremely heavy casualties. Retreat! Retreat behind Yutong City! Paramount Angel Michael of the Holy Paradise waved his holy sword, and his voice erupted throughout the entire battlefield. The united army continued to retreat upon hearing this. Whoosh! A dazzling streak of light suddenly tore through space before appearing before Michael. This was a slender, pure white humanoid creature with 7 different expressions on her face. The divine halo above her head was constantly flashing with different colors. This was a heavenly god. You're running away. Don't you love me anymore? The humanoid creature had tears streaming down her face. A dazed expression appeared on Michael's face, and a hint of love really did appear in his eyes. At this moment, the heavenly god had already launched a vicious fist toward Michael's face. Boom! The terrifying fist instantly punctured Michael's head, and the space within a radius of several hundred kilometers behind him was also shattered, as if the entire heavens had been destroyed. Hee. If you love me, then die. A sweet smile appeared on the heavenly god's face as she spoke. Michael's headless body disintegrated into specks of white light before disappearing. In the next instant, Michael's body materialized over 50 kilometers away, and he looked at the heavenly goddess with a fearful expression before fleeing into the distance. Holy light, indestructible body! How troublesome! The heavenly goddess looked at the fleeing angel with resentment in her eyes, and her body transformed into a streak of divine light as she gave chase. The situation on the battlefield took a drastic turn for the worse. The creation realm was the main force of the battle. One golden noodle after another shot forth, dragging the fleeing light-wing tribe living beings down from the sky. Some of them were crushed to death, some of them were bound by the noodle, and some of them were sliced in half. Holy Lord Noodle's bowl had become extremely large, and it was like a moving fortress. Tens of thousands of ramen noodles shot forth from within the bowl, all of them baring their fangs and brandishing their claws as they pounced toward the surrounding living beings like demons. The ramen noodles were even harder than diamonds, and there was no way that normal living beings would be able to defend against them. A mighty being at the Return to Void pinnacle stage could dictate the course of an entire battlefield. Holy Lord Noodle chortled with glee as it basked in the joy of slaughter. Beside it was a rock golem with crimson flames burning all over its body. This rock golem didn't attack its enemies of its own accord. Instead, it would pummel the oncoming enemies flying. This rock golem was none other than Hong Do. Hong Do heaved a forlorn sigh as he looked at the one-sided battle and his enemies being slaughtered one after another. The power that had once been on friendly terms with the Celestial Court had now become its enemy. This was not what it wanted to see. But what could it do? It couldn't change anything. It couldn't change this power's opinion. In fact, it couldn't even speak. It looked like the creation realm had made the right choice. The heavenly human tribe was simply too powerful. The heavenly gods were invincible, and each and every one of their attacks could destroy heaven and earth. This was the true power of the heavenly human tribe. On top of that, they had the paramount heavenly gods backing them. This was why the creation realm had chosen to side with the heavenly human tribe. Who could stop these heavenly gods? Chapter 1966. Charge! Kill all of the Kingdom of the Nine States United Army. Kill all of the monk soldiers. Kill all of the Lightwing clan. Kill all of the True Demon tribe. The heavenly human tribe United Army chased after them in a frenzy. The three heavenly gods were even more unstoppable. If a god or a Buddha stood in their way, they would kill Buddha. If it weren't for the heavenly disciple candidates, they would have been crushed long ago. Holy Angel Michael of the Holy Paradise, the battling Buddha of the Buddhist Kingdom of the West, and the fairy monarch Yun Menjing of the Dark Night Spirit Realm had all appeared on the central battlefield to face off against three heavenly gods. However, they were still heavenly disciple candidates, so it was still extremely arduous and perilous for them to battle against actual heavenly gods. The battling Buddha had been ambushed and was already severely wounded. Holy Angel Michael was being chased around. The fairy king Yun Menjing was able to resist the heavenly god's attacks and was even able to suppress it earlier on. However, the heavenly god was a being that became more and more powerful as it killed, and it was reaping the lives of all of the Kingdom of the Nine States United Army powerful beings along its path. If this continued, even Yun Menjing would be struggling to hold on. Die, die, die. All the blood, all the death, will become my nourishment, making me stronger. A heavenly god wielding a crimson scythe battled Yun Menjing while reaping the lives of all living beings on the battlefield in a frenzy. Yun Menjing was very frustrated. She really wanted to take the battle to a place with fewer people, but the problem was that the heavenly slaughter god only wanted to kill and wouldn't go with her. If she left, then the casualties of the army would increase by several times, or even more than a dozen times. The dark red divine halo above the heavenly slaughter god's head flashed, and the scythe in its hand slashed through the air toward the dark night fairy king, leaving an invisible afterimage in its wake. Die. A crimson divine light imbued with the paramount power of laws of annihilation hurtled toward the tall and slender fairy king at an extremely terrifying speed. The fairy twisted her slender waist, and her inky black body instantly flashed away from her original position. In the next instant, she charged forward instead of retreating and appeared before the heavenly slaughter god. She had already made a seal with her hands, from which a black divine light erupted forth. Fairy lightless realm. A domain of eternal darkness instantly expanded outward before enshrouding the heavenly slaughter god. Yun Menjing was a dark night elf. In the lightless region of the elves, which was the domain that she ruled over, she could appear and disappear unpredictably by relying on her black body. the heavenly slaughter god discovered that he felt as if he had been separated from the world. Everything around him had been plunged into darkness, but it wasn't absolute darkness. Instead, there was a full moon hanging high in the night sky. He raised his head to look at the full moon, but what he saw was a slender, dark, and slender finger pressed against his forehead, releasing an unimaginable light. Finger of the heavenly Tao! Yun Menjing let out a clear shout, and a boundless light blossomed from her fingertips. Pure heaven-crushing true intent erupted forth. In this world, only this finger was supreme and had boundless might. Rumble! The golden finger pierced through everything before puncturing the heavenly slaughter god's head. Yun Menjing let out a light breath, but before she had the time to catch her breath, she suddenly flew backwards. However, the speed of the sickle was even faster, and in the blink of an eye, it had slashed out a life-seizing crescent wheel. Chi, blood splattered everywhere. There was a cut on her waist, leaving a bloody mark. If she had reacted even a split second slower, her body would have most likely been sliced in half. Delicious blood, the blood of a powerful being. The heavenly slaughter god had lost half of his head, but he still stuck out his tongue and licked the blood on his scythe greedily. What a monster! Yun Menjing's brows furrowed. Right at this moment, the heavenly slaughter god had already pounced toward Yun Menjing with his scythe. The ambush was not very effective, and the fairy lightless domain disappeared. Moonlight dual blades. Yun Menjing spread open her hands to materialize her moonlight dual blades, and she engaged in another battle with the heavenly slaughter god. The power of the moon, which had been condensed to the extreme, clashed relentlessly with the power of slaughter, tearing heaven and earth apart again. Elsewhere on the battlefield, the earth was yellow and twisted. Heat waves surged toward the surrounding living beings. A dull thump erupted. The Monkey King transformed into a ball of flames before crashing heavily into the ground. In the sky above, a heavenly god with a platinum divine halo above his head exuded a scorching heat that was even more scorching than the sun, as if he were going to incinerate everything between heaven and earth. The Monkey King's golden fur had been charred black, and a few large holes had been torn into his armor. His indestructible golden body had also been severely ravaged. Only his eyes were still imbued with boundless battle intent, as well as an unyielding will to fight. His enemy was very terrifying. This was a heavenly god, and he was no match for him in his severely wounded state. Battling Buddha. Master Wukong. Run. All of the Buddhist kingdom powerful beings' expressions shifted drastically upon seeing this. 3 return to void stage mighty figures even joined forces to attack the heavenly god in order to create an opportunity for the battling Buddha to escape. Phoenix Flight Strike. A Buddhist cultivator wielded a Buddhist staff, and he transformed into a phoenix with wings that extended for several dozen kilometers before letting loose a loud cry and pouncing toward the heavenly god. Heaven-crushing Buddhist palm. A battle Buddha unleashed a palm strike. Extreme mystic boundless ice. The Bodhisattva, whose entire body was enshrouded in glacial power, thrust his hands forward to create a torrent of glacial ice that froze everything in its path. The heavenly temperature god's expression remained unchanged. You're overestimating yourself. He thrust a hand through the air, and the phoenix within a radius of several dozen kilometers was shattered by a burst of mighty power, reducing the Buddhist cultivator to a plume of smoke. At this moment, the battle Buddha's heaven-crushing Buddhist palm had already landed on the heavenly temperature god's stomach, upon which his stomach caved in, upon which the power of heaven-crushing exploded violently. The heavenly temperature god's brows furrowed slightly. That hurts a little. Rumble, his stomach contracted and expanded. All of a sudden, boundless white light exploded forth. Unimaginably high temperatures twisted and scorched everything within its radius. The battle Buddha didn't even get a chance to cry out before his entire body was reduced to liquid, which then vaporized into a plume of smoke. Ching Deng. The battling Buddha's eyes exploded with rage upon seeing this. Right at this moment, the torrent of glacial ice unleashed by the Bodhisattva had already reached the heavenly temperature god, but it was all incinerated into scorching gas within a radius of 100 feet. You call this glacial ice? The heavenly temperature god looked down at the Bodhisattva with an emotionless expression, and his body flashed toward the Bodhisattva. The flow of air instantly stopped. Everything fell completely silent. It was as if everything had frozen solid. The Bodhisattva's eyes widened, and before he had a chance to resist, his body suddenly stiffened before being sealed in ice, transforming into a lifeless ice sculpture that plummeted from the sky. Because of that extremely low temperature, his life was actually ended alive. Battling Buddha, you're not going to run? The heavenly temperature god continued to look down at the monkey. He knew that the three Return to Void stage mighty figures had bought the battling Buddha some time, and he could have continued to run. I've changed my mind. The battling Buddha raised his head, and golden flames erupted from his body as he stared directly at the heavenly temperature god. I'm going to kill you now. Chapter 1967. Boom. The earth caved in. The battling Buddha hurtled toward the heavenly temperature god like a flaming meteor. Freeze. The heavenly temperature god gripped the air toward the oncoming golden flame monkey monarch. Crack. The battling Buddha glowered at the heavenly temperature god, but his body was frozen in place like a stone monkey. Everything instantly fell silent. The essence of temperature was the movement of particles. The heavenly temperature god could control the movement of all particles in this world, including the oncoming battling Buddha. He could control every single part of the battling Buddha's body, every single drop of blood, every single microscopic particle, and he could control all of the energy that could move around him. Let your everything return to silence. The heavenly temperature god spoke in an indifferent voice, and the divine halo above his head suddenly took on an extremely frosty hue as he gripped the battling Buddha again. However, in the next instant, his expression shifted. Your blood. How could it still be boiling? The heavenly temperature god's eyes widened. He immediately sensed that something was amiss, and he immediately charged toward the battling Buddha. His hands were like scorching heavenly sabers imbued with the power of laws of extreme heat as they slashed toward the battling Buddha's head and heart. If you can resist my deathly low temperature, then I'm going to cut you down. In the instant that his hand slashed down, boundless golden flames burst forth from the battling Buddha's rock-hard body again, and his golden-banded staff tore through space before crashing down toward the heavenly temperature god. Heaven-crushing god-crushing staff. Bam! The golden-banded staff was imbued with extremely powerful heaven-crushing true intent, and it crashed into the heavenly temperature god's chest. The heavenly temperature god's hand also melted through the battling Buddha's armor at this moment before piercing into his heart, instantly burning a gaping hole into his chest. The heavenly temperature god's chest was pulverized by the golden-banded staff, and he was blasted flying amid a muffled groan. The battling Buddha also fell to the ground, creating another massive crater in the ground. This appeared to be a draw, but the heavenly temperature god's regenerative abilities were clearly even more fearsome. His chest was completely healed after just a few seconds, but a crack had appeared on his divine halo. Very well, is this your deathbed struggle? Now go to hell. The heavenly temperature god's body turned into a scorching white golden color, and he pounced toward the battling Buddha with a crazed expression on his face. He spread open his arms as if he wanted to burn the battling Buddha to death. Come, melt in my scorching embrace. The battling Buddha gritted his teeth and tossed out a string of Buddhist beads. Countless mysterious Sanskrit words surged into the void like a storm. A golden swastika symbol enshrouded the battling Buddha like the toughest fortress. Rumble! The heavenly temperature god crashed viciously into the swastika barrier, but the paramount temperatures were unable to melt this barrier. It was as if there was a boundless power of benevolence keeping all harmful powers at bay. What's the point of this life-saving trump card? It's only delaying your death. The heavenly temperature god chuckled coldly. His scorching body was still sprawled across the swastika symbol as he slowly melted away its solid barrier. He looked at the battling Buddha with a mocking smile on his face. Do you see that? Your army has already been routed, and all of your powerful beings are running for their lives. Who can save you? The #1 war Buddha of the Western Paradise has actually been reduced to building a tortoise shell and struggling at death's door. You have really broadened my horizons. The battling Buddha stared at the heavenly temperature god with a cold expression. I've already sent out a distress signal, and reinforcements will be arriving soon. If you don't run, then you'll be killed by reinforcements. The heavenly temperature god faltered slightly upon hearing this before chortling with glee. Killed? That's the funniest joke I've ever heard. All of the heavenly disciples of the heaven-crushing sect are on the Eastern Front, so none of you heavenly disciple candidates are a match for me. Forgive me for being blunt, but any reinforcements are trash in my eyes. I'll kill all of them until you're in despair, then I'll burn you to death. The heavenly temperature god's face was filled with disdain and cruelty. Some of the retreating Kingdom of the 9 States United Army soldiers were grief-stricken at the sight of the battling Buddha being trapped by the heavenly temperature god, and some of them even wanted to rush over to save him, only to be held back by rational living beings. In the face of a heavenly god, rushing over at a time like this was no different from committing suicide. They knew that it was very likely that the victorious fighting Buddha was going to die here. All of the tens of millions of monk soldiers were filled with indignation and humiliation. They were completely powerless to change this situation. Damn it! The battling Buddha has been trapped to death? Yun Menjing battled the heavenly slaughter god as she turned toward the golden swastika symbol in the distance with a panicked expression. Whoosh! Due to a split second of carelessness, her arm was sliced open by the heavenly slaughter god. Ha ha ha! You're still in the mood to pay attention to others when you're fighting me? Die die die! The heavenly slaughter god seemed to have gone insane as he swung his crimson scythe through the air. Michael's expression darkened upon seeing the battling Buddha's condition. The 3 heavenly disciple candidates were already struggling to take on 3 heavenly gods. If the battling Buddha were to die here, how were they supposed to fight the rest of the battle? But if they went to save him, Michael's flesh crawled as he looked at the heavenly god behind him, who was laughing and crying at the same time. He couldn't even protect himself now, so how was he supposed to save him? The swastika symbol was already beginning to crack and melt. The heavenly temperature god's mocking expression became even more pronounced. Your reinforcements are a little slow. If this goes on, your reinforcements might not even be able to save your corpse. Could it be that they saw you being pressed down by me, so they took a look from afar and fled? The battling Buddha ignored his opponent's mockery and continued to accumulate power. He had already made up his mind. Even if he were to die here, he was going to rip off a chunk of his opponent's flesh and completely cripple the heavenly temperature god. The Kingdom of the 9 States United Army had already been defeated, and the process of retreat was a process of slaughter. He had to at least hold off the heavenly temperature god so that he wouldn't join the slaughter. Blood flowed over the entire White Nectar Sea. One Lightwing clan, true demon tribe, and monk after another fell amid howls of anguish. Despair began to spread through the Kingdom of the 9 States United Army. All of a sudden, a cry of surprise erupted from the United Army. Hurry! Look over there! My God, what's that? So big, so round, so hot? Are those 9 suns? All of the living beings looked up at the expanding suns with astonishment on their faces. The suns of different colors grew larger and larger in their field of vision, and they were even larger and more dazzling than the suns in the sky, as if they were going to incinerate everything in this world. Thus, the spectacle of 10 suns appeared before all of the living beings' eyes. The heavenly temperature god's expression shifted slightly at the sight of the approaching suns, and his expression only truly shifted when he caught sight of the black dot on the sun. The battling Buddha smiled. Our reinforcements are finally here. Chapter 1968. The 9 suns were quickly approaching. Everyone could finally see the true appearance of the suns. All of them had peerlessly dazzling fiery wings, slender, flawless bodies, high necks and cold eyes that looked down upon everyone. They were regal, proud, and powerful. These weren't suns. They were the legendary vermilion birds. So many vermilion birds. Mi Jia Lai's pupils contracted with astonishment on his face. These vermilion birds are all at the Dao integration stage? Yun Menjing was also astonished. Dao integration stage vermilion birds had never appeared on the Tai Chu continent before. Even if there were, they would only be weak vermilion birds with impure bloodlines and low cultivation bases. There had never been a Dao integration stage vermilion bird with such pure and rich bloodlines. Furthermore, there were 9 of them at once. Were these powerful beings friend or foe? The same question surfaced in the hearts of the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army and the Kingdom of the 9 States United Army. A Light Wing Clan powerful being yelled. Look! It's sect leader Enlin. Great! The Heavenly Court's war god is here. Their allies. Their allies. The chance to retaliate is here. Everyone, charge. All of the Kingdom of the 9 States United Army became extremely excited as their morale soared. Enlin's name had resounded throughout the entire Tai Chu continent. He was extremely powerful, had trampled heavenly gods beneath his feet, had shattered the heavenly gate with his sword, and had fought against the heavens and earth. The Kingdom of the 9 States United Army needed heroes, and Enlin was undoubtedly the number 1 hero in the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army. At least for now, he was even more impressive than the heavenly disciples of the heaven-crushing sect. Cyril and Chun were indeed bad *SS, but they weren't as famous as Enlin. At the very least, Enlin had slain countless heavenly gods and constructed 2 heavenly gates of destruction. Now that Enlin had come, not only had he come, but he had also brought 9 Dao integration stage vermilion birds with him. This was a massive boost to the morale of the Kingdom of the 9 States United Army. The battling Buddha smiled. The heaven-crushing sect didn't come, but Enlin did. Are you scared? The heavenly temperature god's face convulsed slightly, and he didn't say anything as he transformed into a streak of golden light and fled into the distance. What nonsense was there to say now? Those heavenly gods who didn't believe in the heresy had all returned to the embrace of the heavenly Tao. Where do you think you're going? Take this! A loud cry erupted from behind the heavenly temperature god. The battling Buddha had voluntarily withdrawn his trump card and swung his golden-banded staff toward the heavenly temperature god's shoal, imbued with extremely powerful heaven-crushing true intent. The heavenly temperature god's expression shifted, and he couldn't help but let loose a torrent of abuse. F***ck. Why didn't I see you like that when you were hiding in your shell? Why are you so hard now that Enlin is here? Enlin is here. Not only can I become hard, I can also grow longer. The battling Buddha chortled with glee, and his golden-banded staff became even more resolute. During this process, the golden-banded staff elongated at an extremely terrifying rate, and it appeared behind the heavenly temperature god in the blink of an eye. The heavenly temperature god reacted very quickly, and he twisted his body in the nick of time. However, the golden-banded staff still grazed past his waist, causing him to lose his balance and plummet to the ground. The battling Buddha was just about to give chase when the heavenly temperature god suddenly turned around and unleashed a palm toward him. Scorching energy surged, and the extreme temperatures instantly warped and pulverized space. Boom! The terrifying scorching energy blasted the battling Buddha flying through the air. Immediately afterward, the heavenly temperature god took this opportunity to flee. Why are you running so fast? Aren't you going to fight? A voice suddenly sounded beside the heavenly temperature god. The heavenly temperature god turned around, and he was instantly scared shitless. Unlin had managed to sneak up on him without him noticing. This white-robed man stood atop a black brick with a golden disc revolving behind him. He had clearly concealed his aura, but the heavenly temperature god was struck by an indescribable sense of asphyxiation. Unlin, I'm not your match. The heavenly temperature god was very panicked, but he still gritted his teeth. Unlin chuckled. I should say that you're no match for me. He launched an almighty punch toward the heavenly temperature god as he spoke. How dare you! The heavenly temperature god roared with rage as he also launched an almighty punch. This punch was as dazzling as the sun, and not only was it imbued with immense power, but it was also imbued with extreme heat and the power of the heavenly gods, thereby allowing it to incinerate everything it came into contact with. Bam! Heaven and earth tremored violently. The heavenly temperature god felt an unimaginable power erupt at the center of the collision before tearing his fist apart with unstoppable force. Unlin's punch was not only imbued with heaven-crushing power that targeted heavenly gods, but it was also imbued with the power of the 5 elements. The two powers combined to make the heavenly temperature god's attack appear extremely feeble and fragile. There was a loud explosion. The heavenly temperature god's scorching arm was pulverized by Unlin's punch, and his body was blasted back several dozen kilometers by the violent energy. Humph, the heavenly temperature god? That's all you've got. Unlin took a glance at his charred arm, which was completely healed by the power of his evergreen technique in just a second, and he continued to pounce toward the heavenly temperature god. All of the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army and the Kingdom of the 9 States United Army drew sharp intakes of breath upon seeing this. The invincible heavenly god was unable to take a single punch from Unlin? The battling Buddha was already mentally prepared for this, and he wore a smug expression on his face. He knew just how bad *SS Unlin was. After all, they had sparred once at the 4-9 Immortal Sect. He had taken a punch from Unlin with all his might, only to almost be crippled, and he was beginning to doubt his own life. It was time for the heavenly temperature god to experience just how terrifying Unlin's fists were. Unlin pursued the heavenly temperature god relentlessly with his invincible power. He was currently in his 5 elemental body's buff state, so no matter who his opponent was, he would be able to crush them all. Heavenly God! Hurry up and protect Heavenly God! 2 Heaven Pioneer Stage Heavenly Human Tribe powerful beings immediately cut off the heavenly temperature god's retreat. The female Great General had a lithe figure, and she wielded a silvery white spear. The spear projection pierced through the sky as it swept toward Unlin. The muscles on one of the southern Great General's bodies exploded, and he borrowed the power of the heavens to launch a punch toward Unlin from behind. Trash, get out of my way! Unlin flicked a finger toward the female Great General. Whoosh! A 5-colored streak of light that resembled both a sword and a spear clashed with the sweeping spear. A crisp crack then erupted. The spear was sliced in half down the middle by the streak of light, and it continued onward without slowing down in the slightest, puncturing a bloody hole into the female Great General's body before exploding violently. The male Great General's fist was just about to land, but Unlin didn't even turn around. Instead, he swatted his other hand behind him as if he were swatting away a mosquito. Bam! There was another explosion. The male Great General's fist hadn't even been completely unleashed before his body was completely obliterated. Double kill. Unlin had slain 2 Great Generals with ease. The entire process took less than a second. This was no longer a simple one-sided beating. This was a complete and utter one-sided slaughter. Don't run, buddy! Unlin yelled as he continued to chase after the heavenly temperature god. His speed became faster and faster, and the distance between him and the heavenly temperature god was rapidly shrinking. All of the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army and the Kingdom of the Nine States United Army were extremely astonished. It looked like even after sacrificing 2 Heaven Pioneer stage great generals, they still weren't able to stop Enlin. The heavenly temperature god was about to die. Chapter 1969. Hong Do couldn't believe what he was seeing. That white-robed man was so dazzling that his eyes stung. This was a cultivator who had once been on par with him, but now, he was dominating the most powerful war on the entire Tai Chu continent. This was like a dream come true. Enlin, who would have thought that you would rise to power at such a terrifying rate? Hong Do was in a daze as he looked at the Enlin in the distance. Gradually, a hint of yearning and anticipation appeared in his eyes. It would be great if you could put an end to this war, it thought to itself, but in the end it shook its head. This was not a war that 1 or 2 people could influence. The true power of the heavenly human tribe was still hidden beneath the surface of the iceberg. Enlin could be considered a huge variable at most, but he wasn't powerful enough to face off against the paramount heavenly gods. The crisp cry of a bird suddenly sounded. Vermilion bird Nanli flapped its wings, and the pure and scorching Nanli holy flames descended from the sky, engulfing over 10,000 living beings in the creation realm like a monstrous tidal wave. Their bodies were burned into ashes, and it was a gruesome sight to behold. Hong Do was given a fright. This place wasn't far from him. He immediately hid behind a mountain. The holy flames of Nanli incinerated all things, and vermilion bird Nanli burned wherever it went, creating a river of flames in its wake. Half of the mountain that Hong Do was hiding behind had been melted, and this was only because vermilion bird Nanli had passed by nearby. Hong Do himself had also sustained light burns. He was a flame-type powerful being, but he had been inadvertently burned by his opponent's flames. How humiliating was that? Similar scenes were playing out elsewhere on the battlefield. After all, 9 Dao integration stage vermilion birds had suddenly appeared on the battlefield, and the enemies didn't even have time to stop them. These vermilion birds were like runaway horses, burning everything in their path while chanting, "Long live the great Empress Vermilion Bird." The 6 vermilion bird sages had recovered significantly after a period of rest and recuperation. At their peak, they were powerful beings capable of destroying planets. They were the ultimate weapons of the vermilion bird tribe, and they could even destroy an entire planet. At this moment, they were unleashing their holy flames to their heart's content, and the destructive power they unleashed was far more than just nuclear explosions. In less than a few minutes, millions of enemies had been killed by the boundless holy flames. The direction of the battle had been changed by them. Enlin's invincible display and the fearsome display of the vermilion birds caused the morale of the fleeing Kingdom of the Nine States United Army to skyrocket, and they began to launch a counterattack. Quick, stop them! The Heaven Pioneer stage great generals of the heavenly human tribe sprang into action, borrowing the power of the heavens to attack the vermilion bird. "I'll stop it!" A heavenly human tribe great general with a profound and ethereal aura charged toward a vermilion bird that was releasing golden flames. He muttered to himself as he pointed one finger at the sky and the other at vermilion bird Huan Jin. Rumble! A mighty force suddenly descended from the heavens. It was a white pillar of light that contained a terrifying suppressive force. It crashed violently onto vermilion bird Huan Jin's body and sent her crashing to the ground. So what if you're a vermilion bird? Now that you've joined the battle, you should be prepared to face the wrath of the heavens. The great general diviner looked down from above with an arrogant expression. However, all of a sudden, vermilion bird Huan Jin disappeared from the ground, leaving behind a massive black hole, as if the white pillar of light had merely crashed into the ground. The heavenly human tribe great general's expression shifted. At this moment, scorching heat swept toward him. A vermilion bird had appeared in front of him with a smile on its face. So what if you're punished by the heavens? Long live great Empress Vermilion Bird! Boundless golden flames engulfed the heavenly human tribe great general as soon as his voice fell. Vermilion bird Huan Jin's forte lay in creating illusions of flames. It was clear that the heavenly human tribe great general had fallen victim to its illusions and died an inexplicable death. In the eyes of onlookers, it looked like the heavenly human tribe great general had unleashed a beam of holy light toward the ground like an idiot before mumbling something to show off. In the end, his body had been engulfed by vermilion bird Huan Jin's holy flames. All of the onlookers' hearts trembled upon seeing this. These vermilion birds were way too powerful. Cultivators of the same cultivation base in the realm of stars were actually quite a bit weaker than cultivators on the Tai Chu continent. However, the 6 vermilion bird sages were different. They possessed bloodlines that were close to that of holy beasts and were far more powerful than Dao integration stage cultivators in the realm of stars. Furthermore, they had been nurtured by the power of Su Xiaolan's vermilion bird heart essence, so they were already showing signs of being reborn. The heavenly slaughter god was feeling quite uneasy upon seeing this, and he was contemplating whether he should retreat. At this moment, Yun Menjiang's attacks became even more ferocious. Not only that, but a vermilion bird with Yu Luo holy flames burning all over its body also pounced toward him. You piece of sh*t. You think you can interfere in my battle? Die. The heavenly slaughter god flared up with rage upon seeing this, and he swung his scythe toward vermilion bird Yu Luo. Vermilion bird Yu Luo remained fearless as its holy flames imbued with extremely powerful heaven-crushing true intent swept forth in a frenzy. Long live great Empress Vermilion bird! Boom! Violent and powerful flames clashed with the heavenly slaughter god's scythe, and a ring-shaped wave of flames exploded in the air. Vermilion bird Yu Luo let loose a wail of anguish as a ghastly gash appeared on its wing. The heavenly slaughter god was also knocked back a few steps by the holy flames, and an expression of astonishment appeared on his face. This vermilion bird was this powerful? Yun Menjing was also astonished. What the hell was with such a ghastly name? Also, wasn't this attack way too terrifying? She only faltered for a split second before taking advantage of this opportunity to continue attacking the heavenly slaughter god. At this moment, vermilion bird Bing Xin also pounced toward her to assist her. She then yelled, "Long live great Empress Vermilion bird," as her icy blue flames swept toward the heavenly slaughter god in a frenzy. Alright, names weren't important anymore. As long as they were happy, they could yell whatever they liked. The name was ghastly, but it was indeed very powerful. It was extremely close to the power unleashed by heavenly disciple candidates, and it was enough to pose a threat to heavenly gods. The 2 vermilion birds teamed up with Yun Menjing against the heavenly slaughter god, and they gradually gained the upper hand. At this moment, Michael was probably the only one in a sorry state. He had already been killed over a dozen times, and if it weren't for the fact that he possessed the holy light indestructible body, he would have died a long time ago. He was still being chased by a heavenly god. That heavenly god wielded the power of heart, which allowed him to unleash the most unfathomable and unfathomable attacks. I've already found a way to kill you. The heavenly emotion goddess chuckled as a ball of white light transformed over and over again in her hand, and a ferocious expression appeared on her face. I'll break your holy light immortal body, kill you, and then get away. That way this trip won't be too bad. Oh? I'm here, and you're still trying to get away? A crisp, pleasant voice suddenly sounded. Whoosh! A crimson sword projection fell from the heavens at an extremely fast speed before transforming into an earth-shattering sword projection that instantly sliced through the heavenly emotion goddess arm. All of the living beings' eyes widened upon seeing this. The azure-robed figure that had been overlooked by all of the living beings began to stir the world. Chapter 1970. Michael couldn't believe his eyes. The invincible heavenly emotion goddess had just had her arm severed by a single sword strike? Who was this little girl? That's right, the powerful being who had sliced off the heavenly emotion goddess' arm was a petite little girl in a jade dress with her hair tied up in twin ponytails. Since when had such an exceptional powerful being appeared on the Tai Chu continent? Wait, that divine sword with lightning and fire intertwining around it looked a little familiar. The heavenly emotion goddess was just as astonished as everyone else. The heavenly emotion goddess was well aware of just how terrifying that sword strike was. Even though it was a sneak attack, the speed and power imbued within the sword were all far superior to that of heavenly disciple candidates like Michael. "Who are you?" the heavenly emotion goddess couldn't help but ask as she looked at the petite little girl before her. The little girl shook the blood off her divine sword before raising her chin slightly. 4-9 Immortal Sect, Flame Pavilion Lord, Su Xiaolan, she said in a childish and cold voice. The entire battlefield instantly fell silent. Everyone's eyes widened in shock. Su Xiaolan? This little girl was the divine phoenix maiden? The heavenly emotion goddess faltered slightly upon hearing this. Michael was even more dumbstruck. All of the living beings present were struck by incredulity. How had Su Xiaolan become so powerful? And how had she become such an adorable lowly? Could it be that the more adorable she was, the more powerful she was? Su Xiaolan didn't waste any more time with words as she slashed her dragon sparrow sword toward the heavenly emotion goddess. Prior to her trip to the realm of stars, she was already just barely able to battle a heavenly god. After her trip to the realm of stars, she had progressed to the Tao integration pinnacle stage, reached the true dragon pinnacle stage, and attained the vermilion bird holy birth. Even she didn't know how bad *SS she had become. In any case, she wasn't scared at all against normal heavenly gods. Su Xiaolan wielded her dragon sparrow sword and perfectly fused the Tao of the true dragon and vermilion bird as she charged fearlessly toward the heavenly emotion goddess, unleashing one profound sword projection after another. Each and every one of her sword projections seemed to be imbued with the power of a vermilion bird, striking the heavenly emotion goddess with boundless might. The heavenly emotion goddess attacks were all punctured by Su Xiaolan, and a dozen or so wounds were inflicted on her body in the blink of an eye. Suddenly, countless strange pupils appeared around him. Heart control, fear. The densely packed eyes began to release invisible waves that instantly struck Su Xiaolan's body. Su Xiaolan's movements suddenly slowed down, and a trace of fear appeared in her eyes. It was as if the enemy in front of her was an extremely terrifying existence, and if she didn't escape, she would be hacked to death in the next second. A cruel smile appeared on the heavenly emotion goddess' face as she pounced towards Su Xiaolan at an extremely fast speed. A white light enshrouded her hand as she prepared to stab it into her chest. Su Xiaolan's heart skipped a beat, and her fearful eyes suddenly became clear again. The vermilion bird heart essence was a pure heart. In the blink of an eye, Su Xiaolan evaded the heavenly emotion goddess' hand by a hair's breadth. At the same time, she flipped her wrist over, and the dragon sparrow sword fell like a bolt of lightning, instantly tearing apart the heavenly emotion goddess' arm. Ah! The heavenly emotion goddess let loose a wail of anguish as she hurtled back in retreat. Both of her arms had been sliced off by Su Xiaolan, and she was in an extremely sorry state. The heavenly emotion goddess' beautiful features suddenly became extremely pitiful. Not only were the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army soldiers feeling extremely sympathetic toward her, but even the living beings of the Kingdom of the Nine States United Army were feeling extremely sympathetic toward her. However, Su Xiaolan was completely unaffected, and she continued to pounce toward the Heavenly Emotion Goddess with a cold smile on her face. The Heavenly Emotion Goddess was extremely shocked. Why wasn't her emotions affecting Su Xiaolan? One had to realize that she was most proficient in manipulating emotions. Even Michael, who had the most resolute Tao heart and perfect heaven-crushing true intent, was unable to escape her interference. How could this petite little girl remain completely unaffected? Was her heart made of stone? It wasn't actually a stone, but it was even more difficult to influence than a stone. This was because the vermilion bird heart essence resided within Little Land's heart, which was an eternal existence that transcended beyond heaven and earth. With the protection of the vermilion bird heart essence, it was impossible for the heavenly emotion goddess to influence Little Land's heart through the power of the heavenly gods. No. The heavenly emotion goddess' eyes suddenly closed at the sight of the oncoming Su Xiaolan. Extreme grief reverberated throughout heaven and earth. All of the living beings within a radius of over 500 kilometers suddenly burst into tears. Boundless grief welled up in their hearts, and some of them even resorted to committing suicide on the spot. However, Su Xiaolan, who was at the epicenter of all of this, remained completely unmoved. The heavenly emotion goddess had been dealt a heavy blow, but she refused to give up and continued to unleash emotional attacks. Rage. Love. Do you like me? Whoosh. Su Xiaolan slashed her sword through the air, slicing the heavenly emotion goddess' waist open. She smiled. I like to cut you down. The divine halo above the heavenly emotion goddess' head began to crack open. No. The heavenly emotion goddess was on the brink of a mental breakdown. Joy. A smile finally appeared on Su Xiaolan's face. The heavenly emotion goddess thought that she had finally been influenced. However, Su Xiaolan's dragon sparrow sword did not stop there. She continued to attack with a smile on her face. An innocent smile appeared on the little girl's face. I'm so happy to see you in such despair. The heavenly emotion goddess. At this moment, Su Xiaolan's dragon sparrow sword fell again, inflicting a bone-deep wound on the heavenly emotion goddess' chest. The heavenly emotion goddess was truly in despair. She dragged her riddled body through the air and hurtled back in retreat, giving up on the idea of attacking Su Xiaolan with her emotions. I've changed my mind. A crazed expression appeared on the heavenly emotion goddess' face as she looked at the relentless Su Xiaolan. I'm not going to run anymore. I'm going to kill you. She had never felt so defeated before. Even if she had to run, she was going to teach Su Xiaolan a lesson first, no matter the price. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you. The heavenly emotion goddess suddenly turned around, and light erupted from the divine halo above her head. The cracks on her divine halo began to spread, but the paramount heavenly god aura emanating from her body only became more terrifying. She tossed a budding lotus flower toward Su Xiaolan. Come out, the being you once feared the most. A sinister smile appeared on the heavenly emotion goddess' face as she clapped her hands together and injected her power into the lotus flower. This is the perfect manifestation of the heavenly emotion lotus, and it can summon the being you once feared the most. You are very powerful, but the being you feared the most is even more powerful, so you can just let them deal with you. The heavenly emotion goddess was confident in her victory. Immediately afterward, a crimson skeleton wielding a scythe and a thin and feeble void spirit tribe living being wielding a divine staff appeared in her field of vision. They were none other than the god engulfing skeleton and ember. Not only were their auras very similar, but their powers were also almost identical. Su Xiaolan. Vermilion Bird Essential Technique, Heavenly Flight Annihilation. Crimson Essential Power roared and completely engulfed the god engulfing skeleton and ember. Awe. The two of them let loose blood-curdling cries before being incinerated on the spot. The heavenly emotion goddess was scared ***less. What happened to the enemies she feared the most? He was insta-killed just like that. Was the enemy you feared so weak? Whoosh. The vermilion bird essential power continued onward, transforming into a dazzling sword projection that sliced the heavenly emotion goddess body cleanly in half. Everything had happened far too quickly, to the point where the heavenly emotion goddess had no time to evade. Su Xiaolan held her dragon sparrow sword and looked at the heavenly emotion goddess with a calm expression. I have nothing to fear now. Chapter 1971. Su Xiaolan had completely crushed the heavenly emotion goddess. This scene completely shocked all of the Allied forces and enemies present. They had already experienced for themselves just how powerful a heavenly god was. However, a heavenly god like this was being pummeled by Su Xiaolan. She didn't even have a chance to injure Su Xiaolan. What kind of sorrow was this? This was a massive visual shock. Those who didn't know better would be wondering why the heavenly gods had suddenly become so weak. In reality, what had truly changed was Su Xiaolan's power. Everyone could accept that Enlin was extremely bad *SS. After all, Enlin had always been a force to be reckoned with, so they were already prepared for this. However, Su Xiaolan's power was far inferior to even Michael's. It had only been less than a year since the Heavenly God's execution livestream, so how had she become so powerful? Was this the rhythm of husband and wife cheating together? The Heavenly Emotion Goddess? The Heavenly Slaughter God's pupils contracted at the sight of the Heavenly Emotion Goddess, who had been sliced in half. His eyes gradually regained clarity, and he began to consider retreating. If things continued like this, all of them were going to die here. Retreat. Heavenly Human Tribe United Army, retreat. The Heavenly Slaughter God yelled at the army on the battlefield. His voice was imbued with authority, and it spread to every corner of heaven and earth. All of the living beings who were fighting were astonished. How could this be? All of the creation realm powerful beings were in disbelief. Had they really been defeated? The Western Divine Dragon, who was battling the blood-fong vermilion bird in the air above, spat. F***ck, I've been wanting to leave for a long time. Has he finally given the order? He spread open his wings and fled into the distance without even a word of farewell. The Heavenly Human Tribe United Army had absolute obedience to the Heavenly God. They had wings, which allowed them to flee even faster. Just as the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army retreated like the receding tide, the Kingdom of the Nine States United Army began a frenzied counterattack. Charge! Don't let them get away! Kill one and you'll earn one. Everyone, charge! Avenge our fallen brothers! One light wing clan being after another threw spears of light toward the fleeing living beings. The monk soldiers unleashed one golden spell technique after another to kill all of the nearby Void Spirit Tribe living beings. The experts of the True Demon Tribe were the craziest. They tore celestials, hollow spirits, and western dragons apart with their bare hands. All enemies that stood in their way would be torn apart. A burly true demon who was clad in black armor and wielding a gigantic coffin-like crimson sword stepped on the corpse of a western mystical dragon. He was bathed in a rain of blood as he laughed heartily. Very good, the true demon tribe has Cyril, while the humans have Enlin and Su Xiaolan. This battle has really given me a lot of surprises, and I'm really looking forward to the future of history. Rumble, the great Tao of heaven and earth began to mourn. The fall of the divine dragon triggered the heaven and earth mourning phenomenon. This Tao integration stage true demon had just slain a Tao integration stage divine dragon. The super powerful being from the true demon tribe did not look pleased at all. Instead, he looked at the two battles in the distance. The more he looked, the more incredulous he felt. Whether it was Enlin or Su Xiaolan, it couldn't understand the power that they were displaying at the moment. What kind of power was this? Why was there such a massive disparity between them when they were both at the Tao integration pinnacle stage? No, Enlin seemed to be at the return to void pinnacle stage. With this in mind, the super powerful being instinctively drew a sharp intake of breath. So be it. It was too frustrating to think about this. Boom. An earth-shattering boom suddenly erupted in the distance. Enlin crushed the heavenly temperature god into the ground again with his invincible power and speed. The aftermath of the fist force caused the ground to sink and crack, and countless mountains to turn into dust. More and more cracks appeared on the heavenly temperature god's divine halo. He finally experienced what despair was. Not only was he no match for Enlin, but even escape was an extravagant hope. What kind of man was this? Was there really someone who could stop him? The heavenly temperature god looked up at the white robe in the sky, which was a little too dazzling under the sunlight. No, this was way too much. At the same time, the little girl in the jade dress was also the center of attention. She held a dragon sparrow sword in her hand, and her exquisite jade dress made her appear very adorable and harmless, but no one dared to underestimate her. The heavenly emotion goddess, who had been sliced in half, transformed into two streaks of white light that fled into the distance. Little Xiaolan's brows furrowed slightly, and her eyes transformed into the golden eyes of a true dragon. She gripped the air, upon which countless bolts of lightning shot forth, intertwining to form a cage of lightning that sealed off the heavenly emotion goddess' path of retreat. As long as my heart remains, my body shall exist forever. The two streaks of light combined as one again to form the unscathed heavenly emotion goddess. This heavenly god looked like she was fully focused on resurrecting herself, but the cracks on her divine halo had already given her away. Su Xiaolan knew that if she continued to slash him a few more times, he would be dead. All that talk about how her heart remained unscathed and her body existed forever was just a bluff. As long as she had enough power, she would be able to strike despair into her heart and see if her heart remained. Both of the heavenly gods had been forced into a corner. The Kingdom of the Nine States United Army was already in a state of frenzy, but they couldn't help but glance at the battle taking place in the distance. All of them knew that as long as those two heavenly gods were slain, they would be able to secure a perfect victory. Enlin didn't waste any time. He clenched his fists, and the golden halo behind him quickly rotated as 5 types of pinnacle powers flowed into his fist like flowing water. He fell from the sky like a shooting star before aiming his fist directly at the heavenly temperature god's head. He was going to completely destroy the heavenly temperature god with this attack. The heavenly temperature god also began to struggle as a blue aura erupted from his body, freezing everything in place. Super-dimensional low temperature. Realm boundary, all things stop. A blue aura proliferated, turning everything between heaven and earth into black and white. However, Enlin was like an unreasonable ferocious beast as he tore through the black and white of heaven and earth and incinerated the super-dimensional low temperature. Even the silent world was unable to stop his iron fist. Have a taste of my iron fist of love. A sinister smile appeared on Enlin's face as he launched his fist toward the heavenly temperature god's face. The heavenly temperature god's mouth gaped open, and his mind went completely blank. Enough. A light voice suddenly sounded. It wasn't very loud, but all of the living beings on the ground could hear it. A semi-transparent yellow youth appeared before the heavenly temperature god before extending a palm to defend himself against Enlin's fist. Boom! The terrifying power behind Enlin's fist exploded forth. The entire earth tremored violently, encompassing an area with a radius of several thousand kilometers. However, strangely enough, the earth didn't cave in any further. He was able to perfectly defend against my full power punch? Enlin looked at the youth who had suddenly appeared before him, then at the greenish-yellow divine halo, and his pupils contracted slightly as he suddenly thought of a saying. Heaven, earth, black, and yellow, I rank second. My power exists in this world. He was one of the 6 paramount heavenly gods, the heavenly earth god. Chapter 1972. Enlin's expression instantly became extremely grave. He knew very well what a paramount heavenly god entailed. Not only were they the most powerful forms that the heavens could unleash, but they were also representatives of paramount laws that transcended beyond the powers of ordinary heavenly gods. Enlin had never truly fought a paramount heavenly god before. However, he had seen a paramount heavenly god fight. Chen Chen was able to easily slap away divine heaven stage heavenly humans who had unleashed their most powerful techniques and divine halos. However, he was only able to gain a slight advantage over the heavenly earth god. In fact, Chun had even sustained severe wounds in the face of the enraged heavenly light goddess. And Lin would never forget the scenes he had witnessed in the land of eternal light. The earth had been transformed into boundless lava, and a series of colossal lava dragons had erupted into the sky, causing heaven and earth to tremble violently. A majestic body of light that reached the heavens, and it looked like it was releasing a supreme Taoist technique. That's right, and Lin knew just how powerful a paramount heavenly god was. He had also seen what a paramount heavenly god looked like in battle. Hence, he was feeling extremely grave now. At the same time, he was also feeling unprecedented excitement. Take another punch from me. And Lin clenched his other fist, and 5-colored power revolved around it, creating a light that was even more dazzling than the sun. He activated his 5-elemental body to its maximum extent, and his heaven-crushing true intent surged forth at the same time. Fist of the Heavenly Tao. The fist expanded infinitely, and it was as if it were a divine hammer capable of destroying the heavenly Tao as it crashed viciously toward the heavenly earth god's face. A hint of emotion appeared in the heavenly earth god's cold eyes. He was clearly not expecting Lin to still dare to attack after recognizing him. He extended his other palm to meet the attack. Boom! An indescribable power erupted forth. And Lin could guarantee that if this fist were to strike a normal planet, it would definitely be able to shatter the planet. However, he felt as if he had struck a massive continent that struck despair in the face of the heavenly earth god's palm. This continent was extremely grand, indescribable, immeasurable, and boundless. No matter how powerful he was, there was no way he could break through this boundless continent. The power of the fist was sucked clean by the heavenly earth god's palm. The earth trembled violently once more. This time, the core of the tremor covered an area of over 10,000 kilometers. And Lin was suddenly enlightened. The heavenly earth god had perfectly transferred all of his power to the surface of the Tai Chu continent. It was also at this moment that a burst of heaven-crushing power suddenly disrupted this perfect transformation. Crack! Boom! The ground within a radius of several thousand meters suddenly cracked and caved in. The heavenly earth god's feet also slid back a few meters. Even Lin was surprised by this scene. He couldn't help but grin. What? I thought you would never move. The heavenly earth god, the delicate-looking youth, was indeed a little surprised. He didn't expect Lin's combat power to increase so much in such a short period of time. The power of the 5 elements combined with the power of heaven crushing was able to break the balance of the earth. Do you still want to fight? The heavenly earth god asked. And Lin was a little surprised. You don't seem to have much hostility towards me? Now is not the time for a decisive battle. If I fight you to the death, my enemies will take advantage of the situation, the heavenly earth god replied in an indifferent voice. A smile appeared on Lin's face. What's bad for you is good for me. I love doing things that annoy you the most. Eat this. Fist of the heavenly Tao. The 5-elemental ring behind Lin revolved, and heaven-crushing true intent poured forth from his fist. The heavenly earth god. You can't stop me. The heavenly earth god no longer defended himself. Instead, he unleashed a fist of his own. A faint greenish-yellow divine light enshrouded his fist. When the fist fell, Lin was greeted by the sight of the boundless earth crashing down upon him. It was impossible to describe what a terrifying feeling this was. A sense of powerlessness, a sense of suffocation, a sense of insignificance. Countless negative emotions welled up in his heart at this moment. This was not an emotional disturbance. Instead, it was an instinctive sense of horror and trepidation. F*CKU. Lin was a reckless man, and even though he was a little fearful, he also had boundless battle intent, and his fist of the heavenly Tao fell with even more determination. Boom! Heaven and earth suddenly tremored at the same time. The 5-colored light clashed with the greenish-yellow divine light, and it was as if 2 planets had crashed into each other. The area within a radius of several hundred kilometers was reduced to a vast expanse of empty space. Unlin's arm crumbled, and blood splattered through the air. His bones were instantly pulverized, and his body was knocked flying for tens of thousands of meters. The heavenly Earth God was also unable to dispel the full force of Unlin's attack, and he was knocked back a few steps. A wisp of white smoke began to rise from his translucent fist, and a faint crack could be seen on it. The heavenly temperature god stood behind the heavenly Earth God, and his eyes widened as he momentarily forgot to breathe. Unlin had wounded the heavenly Earth God. At this moment, the heavenly Earth God had already turned around. "What are you still standing there for? Hurry up and run." The heavenly temperature god came to his senses. The heavenly Earth God had come here to save them. Yes. The heavenly temperature god nodded respectfully before flying into the distance as a streak of scorching white light. However, he hadn't even gotten more than 50 kilometers away when he suddenly sensed a terrifying aura approaching him. "Don't go!" A white-robed cultivator pounced toward him with a cruel expression. The heavenly temperature god was astonished. Had Unlin gone insane? Didn't he know that the heavenly Earth God was on the battlefield? How could he abandon the heavenly Earth God to kill him? This was a blatant slap to the face. Sure enough, in the next instant, the heavenly Earth God appeared beside Unlin, and his fist was imbued with a greenish-yellow light as it hurtled toward Unlin. Unlin could take the heavenly Earth God's attack head-on and attack the heavenly temperature god. In that case, he might be able to kill the heavenly temperature god, but he could also be pummeled to death. Was it worth it? Right at this moment, a blood-curdling cry erupted in the distance. The heavenly emotion goddess had been sliced in half by Su Xiaolan again. The heavenly Earth God's expression shifted, and he finally realized what Unlin was trying to do. Unlin was not chasing after the heavenly temperature god just to kill him. Instead, he was trying to lure him away from Su Xiaolan so that Su Xiaolan would have a chance to kill the heavenly emotion goddess without any interference. The heavenly Earth God immediately unleashed a fist toward Unlin. Unlin responded with a fist of his own. Bam! A terrifying collision erupted, and the purest and most boundless power of the earth crashed viciously toward Unlin. Unlin's arm cracked open again, and his body flew back like a cannonball. However, his extraordinary regenerative abilities allowed him to regenerate his arm as he flew through the air. He then suddenly stopped in midair before pouncing toward the heavenly Earth God again. Unlin was taking the initiative to attack the heavenly Earth God. The heavenly Earth God retaliated. Bam bam bam! The two of them exchanged a few more punches. Unlin was on the back foot every single time, but the heavenly Earth God seemed to be wary of something as it refrained from killing Unlin, nor did it unleash its full power. Unlin knew that he was no match for the heavenly Earth God in his current state. That was what he was thinking, but the spectators didn't think so. They looked on at the two of them clashing so quickly that they couldn't even be seen. All they could see were balls of terrifying energy exploding in the air, and all of them were completely dumbstruck. It was as if everything that was unfolding before their eyes had already transcended beyond their wildest imaginations. Unlin, he was able to hold his own against the heavenly Earth God. Chapter 1973. The battle between Unlin and the heavenly Earth God was simply too powerful. No one below the Tao integration stage was able to see what was going on. Even Tao integration stage super mighty figures were able to see what was going on. They could see Unlin's hand being blasted apart over and over again, only to quickly regenerate within a second before continuing to battle the heavenly Earth God with no fear of death. Hong Do was even more dumbstruck. Unlin was on par with the heavenly Earth God? The heavenly Earth God was one of the most powerful beings in the entire heavenly human tribe. Normal heavenly gods couldn't compare to him, but Unlin was able to hold his own against him. Was this world already this bizarre? The three heavenly disciple candidates, the battling Buddha, Yun Menjing and Michael, were all dumbstruck. They had thought that Enlin was only an ordinary heavenly disciple who was about as powerful as the ancient dragon empress, or at most a little more powerful. But now it looked like Enlin was on a completely different level from them. Enlin's heaven-crushing technique was more powerful than anything they had ever seen. Not only that, but after combining the heaven-crushing technique with some kind of special power, the power it unleashed was even more earth-shattering. No wonder Chen Chun and Cyril insisted on leaving the position of third heavenly disciple to Enlin. Meanwhile, at the location where Su Xiaolan was battling, "As long as my heart remains, my body exists forever." The heavenly emotion goddess voice reverberated through the air, and the two halves of the heavenly emotion goddess body reformed. Essential power, heaven-crushing god-slaying technique. Little Xiaolan spread open her dazzling vermilion bird wings, and as she flapped her wings, she closed the distance between them at an incredible speed. She reached the heavenly emotion goddess almost in the blink of an eye before plunging her dragon sparrow sword into the heavenly emotion goddess body again. Boom! A crimson sword intent pierced through the air for over 1,000 kilometers, as if the crimson river of hell had parted the heavens. The heavenly emotion goddess face was filled with despair. She had been insta-killed as soon as she revived. What was going on? Couldn't she just fight normally? This was the 6th time she had been slain. The divine halo above her head was already riddled with cracks, and it was about to collapse. "As long as my heart remains, my body exists forever." The heavenly emotion goddess's feeble voice sounded. Origin power, heaven-shattering god-punishing. Rumble! The heavenly emotion goddess exploded again. Little Xiaolan panted lightly as she held her dragon sparrow sword, but a cold light flashed through her eyes. Faster, faster, and Lin had fought for so much time for her, she couldn't waste it. She was going to kill the heavenly emotion goddess today. "As long as my heart remains, my body." Origin power, heavenly punishment. Little Xiaolan raised her dragon sparrow sword high into the air and waited for the heavenly emotion goddess to revive. The heavenly emotion goddess had a mental breakdown. F***CK, I haven't even resurrected yet, and you're already unleashing your trump card? I'm a mighty heavenly god. Did I revive just to eat your trump card? The heavenly emotion goddess was very indignant and humiliated. My body is eternal. Heaven-shattering god-slaying. Rumble. The heavenly emotion goddess had only just materialized her body when the dragon sparrow sword punctured her body, upon which the scorching vermilion bird essential power incinerated her body into nothingness. All of the enemies and allies on the battlefield were shocked and couldn't help but sympathize with the heavenly god who had been alive for less than a second. This was way too tragic. Being insta-killed once was not enough. She was going to be insta-killed countless times. She was a mighty boss, but she was being killed by little Xiaolan. All of them wanted to report little Xiaolan to the heavenly god. As long as my heart remains, my body. Little Xiaolan raised her dragon sparrow sword high into the air. Origin power, heavenly punishment. My body, my body. Wah! Her sobbing voice reverberated through the air. Little Xiaolan. All of the onlookers. What the F***CK? Was she crying from being slaughtered? All of a sudden, countless terrifying projections appeared in the air. There were evil ghosts, bloodthirsty Shuras, fiend celestial Armageddon. All of the projections enshrouded Su Xiaolan as terrifying auras enshrouded her. Roar. I'll kill you. I'll kill you even if I have to give up everything. One projection after another materialized before pouncing towards Su Xiaolan in a frenzy. Little Xiaolan's petite body remained unscathed amid the storm, but a faint smile appeared on her face. Are you going to stake everything on this one attack? That means you've reached your limit. Her eyes suddenly turned a vibrant red. There was a hint of seductive charm in her pure and holy eyes, and a hint of pride and aloofness in her transcendent eyes. God-slaying sword. Little Xiaolan spoke in an indifferent voice, and her crimson vermilion bird essential power expanded to take on the form of a vermilion bird. She then flapped her wings, and all of the projections were reduced to nothingness by her essential power. The heavenly emotion goddess expression was still frozen on her face when Su Xiaolan appeared before her, and her dragon sparrow sword plunged viciously into her chest before puncturing through her body. "You're dead." Little Xiaolan stared at the heavenly emotion goddess with her crimson eyes. "Air." The heavenly emotion goddess opened her mouth, only to find that she was unable to utter a single word. The scorching vermilion bird essential power flames engulfed her slender body. Crack, a crisp crack erupted as her divine halo was completely pulverized. Heavenly emotion goddess! No! All of the heavenly human tribe soldiers were grief-stricken upon seeing this. Every single heavenly deity had a profound meaning to them. They were what they pursued and believed in. But now, a heavenly deity actually died on the battlefield, dying miserably under the witness of millions upon millions of soldiers. This was an extremely great blow to them. The heavenly emotion goddess had been incinerated into nothingness. Only a burst of invisible power returned to the heavenly Tao. The Kingdom of the Nine States United Army's morale was greatly boosted, and they charged forward with even more fearlessness. What was bad *SS? What AF King bad *SS was that when a paramount heavenly god appeared and threatened to save the heavenly gods, they were still able to slay the heavenly gods right before their very eyes. This was the equivalent of slapping the paramount heavenly gods in the face. What a hearty, heart-stirring feeling! Were the Kingdom of the Nine States United Army still scared now? Even the heavenly earth god couldn't do anything to Enlin and Su Xiaolan, so what did they have to be scared of? Thus, the Kingdom of the Nine States United Army became extremely courageous, while the heavenly human tribe United Army retreated in an even more disheveled manner. Countless enemy soldiers were being slain with every passing second. The heavenly earth god's expression darkened upon seeing the heavenly emotion goddess being slain. He no longer exchanged blows with Enlin. Instead, he took one of Enlin's punches head-on before unleashing a punch toward Enlin's heart. This punch was far too fast, and Enlin had no time to defend himself. The boundless power behind the punch caved in Enlin's chest, and his back bulged before exploding into a bloody hole. Pfff. Enlin threw up a mouthful of blood as he flew through the air. The heavenly earth god's body also swayed violently, and it was impossible to determine his injuries. He took an indifferent glance at Enlin before disappearing into the ground. Enlin lay on the ground and looked at the fleeing heavenly gods. He listened to the battle cries around him, and a joyful smile appeared on his face. They had won this battle. They had secured a resounding victory. Chapter 1974. 1 hour later, the battle drew to a conclusion. The Kingdom of the Nine States United Army had sacrificed around 10 million soldiers in this battle, but they had slain over 20 million enemies. This had to do with their high morale, as well as the heavenly human tribe United Army's disheveled retreat, as well as the 9 vermilion birds. Both sides had lost a Tao integration stage super mighty figure. However, the heavenly emotion goddess had fallen, and that was the most significant accomplishment. The heavenly temperature god and the heavenly slaughter god had escaped. No one could catch them anymore. All in this battle, the coalition army of the 9 states had achieved a perfect victory, sweeping away the atmosphere of despair from before. In particular, their allies were still able to slay a heavenly god despite the fact that even the heavenly earth god had been mobilized. To them, this was extremely exciting. If the heavenly earth god hadn't stepped in, the haters would probably have said, "What's there to be happy about?" The enemy boss hadn't even appeared yet, so no matter how many victories they won now, the enemy was going to come back sooner or later. However, the heavenly earth god had stepped in to stop Enlin and the others from killing a heavenly god, but Enlin and Su Xiaolan were still able to hold off the heavenly earth god while the heavenly earth god was slain by the other. How were they supposed to retort now? There was no way to retort. The heavenly earth god's face had been slapped swollen. Where else could the haters go? Without a doubt, this was a perfect victory. All of the tribes were celebrating this victory. In a peculiar realm, within an intricate and antiquated house, the woman wore a divine robe and had a fresh and elegant appearance, and she was ceaselessly fiddling with a Tao wheel. Your Majesty, I have important news to report. A woman with a white snake tail had a flushed blush on her cheeks, and her eyes were filled with scorching light. Little Bai, why are you in such a hurry? The woman asked with a gentle expression. The snake woman in a black dress leaned against the door frame. You're probably reporting about the battle between the Kingdom of the Nine States United Army and the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army, right? We're going to the east to provide reinforcements, so what's the big deal? White Spirit Snake immediately shook her head. It's different this time. How so? Did a Tao integration stage super mighty figure die? Black Spirit Snake's brows perked up slightly. The heavenly emotion goddess is dead, White Spirit Snake replied. Black Spirit Snake's expression shifted upon hearing this. This is indeed a big deal. And he killed the heavenly emotion goddess right in front of the heavenly earth god. White Spirit Snake was extremely excited. Black Spirit Snake was astonished. Goddess Nuwa also stopped fiddling with the Tao wheel, and she was momentarily stunned. Obviously, this matter had also exceeded her expectations. Is it Enlin and Su Xiaolan? Goddess Nuwa asked. Yes. White Spirit Snake nodded with excitement. Enlin held off the heavenly earth god while Su Xiaolan slew the heavenly emotion goddess. Goddess Nuwa smiled. You've done well. What a pleasant surprise. Black Spirit Snake was dumbstruck. Stall the heavenly earth god? Was Enlin already that heaven-defying? In the eastern region of the Tai Chu continent, Dawn City, the celestial Dharch hung up the voice transmission before looking up into the sky with a blank expression. After a short while, he turned to Yiling, Xiao Zhe, and Xiao Tu with a complex expression on his face, all of whom had also received the news. They were clearly just being humble. At the West Sea Alliance, Lan Xiaoni looked at the latest news, and a joyful smile appeared on her face. Big Boss Enlin really is the most powerful. No matter where he goes, he's always the most dazzling presence. What do I do? Lan Xiaoni pursed her lips as her heart raced. I'm about to become your fangirl. When are you coming to the West Sea? The heavenly sea god has already appeared. I really want to see you. The mermaid princess murmur sounded within the palace with indescribable longing. News of this battle spread like wildfire among all of the major powers. News of this quickly spread to the news media, upon which the entire Tai Chu continent erupted into an uproar. Enlin had appeared out of thin air and was on par with the heavenly earth god. This news shocked all of the living beings present. What was going on? Enlin was only able to hold his own against normal heavenly gods not long ago, but he was now able to hold his own against paramount heavenly gods? What the F***ck was going on? Too many living beings were in complete disbelief. However, this did not slow down Enlin's progress in the slightest. That's right, Enlin had once again dominated all of the headlines on the Tai Chu continent. His fame once again shook the continent. Under the admiration and awe of countless living beings, this white-robed cultivator from the east was further deified. At the same time, Su Xiaolan's killing of the heavenly emotion goddess was only second to Enlin in terms of fame, and she was the subject of much heated discussion. The fact that she had been revered as the Great Empress Vermilion Bird by the 9 Tao integration stage Vermilion Birds created a massive stir across the entire continent. The title of the Divine Phoenix Divine Maiden was now fully deserved. Other people's Emperor Fu Tian and Emperor Ri Tian were all fake. Why don't you try to defy the heavens and sun the heavens? However, the Divine Phoenix Divine Maiden was the real Vermilion Bird, the real Great Empress. Her Dao title was the Divine Phoenix Divine Maiden. Not only was Su Xiaolan the goddess of the Kingdom of the Nine States, but she was also quickly becoming the goddess of the entire Tai Chu continent. Her halo was so bright that normal female cultivators didn't even dare to look her in the eyes. After witnessing the terrifying power displayed by Enlin and Su Xiaolan, many of the higher-ups of the major powers had declared the 4-9 Immortal sect to be the #1 sect in the Kingdom of the Nine States. They were even more powerful than the Celestial Court. Not only was this acknowledged by all of the major powers, but it was also acknowledged by all of the living beings. The leader of the 5 great sects, the 4-9 Immortal sect, had officially overtaken the Celestial Court and become the #1 sect in the Kingdom of the Nine States. Some of the residents of the Kingdom of the Nine States sighed with emotion upon seeing this. How many tens of thousands of years had it been since the Celestial Court's position had been shaken? How long had the 4-9 Immortal sect only risen to prominence? They had only been dead for over 100 years, but they had miraculously turned the tables? Everyone sighed with emotion, but they were also genuinely elated. This sect had created far too many miracles and had always been the main force in the war against the heavenly human tribe. How many things had the 4-9 Immortal sect done for itinerant cultivators? How many enemies had it slain? How many disciples and elders had it sacrificed? Its appearance represented the revival and counterattack of the human race. It represented that the human race could create countless possibilities, and it brought hope to the human race. Since it had done all of this, the status it had now was fully deserved. Even the immortals of the Celestial Court were momentarily dazed upon hearing this news before smiling and acknowledging the 4-9 Immortal sect's status. Some filthy rich immortals even boasted to their friends that they had tasted sect leader Enlin's cooking. Some filthy rich immortals even retorted. Not only had they tasted sect leader Enlin's cooking, but they had also tasted the Divine Phoenix Maiden's cooking. Everyone burst into raucous laughter upon hearing this. Come to think of it, this chef-god couple had a very deep history with the Celestial Court. All of the immortals could still recall the two of them back then. Before they knew it, a small sapling had grown into a massive tree that obscured the entire sky. That's right. Who would have thought that the couple who had worked so hard to make a living in the Celestial Court would become mighty figures whose names resounded throughout the entire Tai Chu continent? One day later, the Celestial Court issued a statement to the entire continent, congratulating the 4-9 Immortal sect for achieving yet another glorious victory. They hoped that the 4-9 Immortal sect would lead the Kingdom of the Nine States and the human race to victory. The 4-9 Immortal sect had officially become the #1 sect in the Kingdom of the Nine States. Chapter 1975. On the central front of the Tai Chu continent. The main city of the Kingdom of the Nine States United Army, Yutong City. The moon was as bright as water, and the sea of stars was as vast as a sea. Under the beautiful night sky. A courtyard with a pleasant view. Enlin looked at his handsome figure in the newspaper, and he couldn't help but bask in self-admiration. So handsome, he sighed with emotion. Little Xiaolan sipped some hot tea in an unhurried manner. She was very small, but she was making tea in an extremely smooth and fluid manner, giving her a peculiar sense of beauty. All right, you've already said it over a dozen times. I know you're handsome, all right? Little Xiaolan rolled her eyes at the sight of Enlin's expression. Little Xiaolan, do you like me? Enlin suddenly asked. Little Xiaolan's hand that was holding the teacup faltered slightly, and a blush appeared on her face. Of course I like it. Isn't that obvious? Me too. Enlin smiled. Little Xiaolan was a little embarrassed. I know you like me. I mean I also like myself, Enlin replied. Little Xiaolan. Enlin looked at the man in the white robe in the newspaper and sighed with emotion. He's so handsome, little Xiaolan, hee. The battle on the central front settled down for the time being. The Heavenly Human Tribe United Army seemed to be wary of Enlin and Su Xiaolan, and they didn't attack as aggressively as before. At most, they sent some powerful beings to scout out the Kingdom of the Nine States United Army. The two sides entered a stalemate. All of the higher-ups on the Central Front elected Enlin as their paramount leader. Enlin had initially wanted to decline in a roundabout manner, but the battling Buddha, Yun Menjing, Michael, and Demon Lord Dekka had all unanimously recommended him as their paramount leader. They expressed that no one was more suitable for this position than him, and they wouldn't accept any other powerful beings as their leader. Under the pressure of all of the powerful beings present, Enlin could only reluctantly accept this position and become the paramount leader of the heaven-crushing United Army on the Central Front. After that, he continued to sit in his lounge chair and indulge in his own self-satisfaction as he read his newspaper. Just like the battling Buddha and Demon Lord Dekka, he was the type of person who would fight. His battle plan was to charge forward recklessly. Therefore, the task of military strategy and deployment of various forces fell to Yun Menjing and Mi Jialai. Although Enlin had taken over the position of the highest leader of the central line of battle, he still ate and drank as he should, and it did not affect his current leisure at all. Enlin, what was it like battling the heavenly earth god? Would you have been able to win in a battle to the death? Su Xiaolan slowly picked up the teacup and sipped the fragrant hot immortal tea. She narrowed her beautiful eyes and asked softly, When I fought him, I always felt that I was so small. Enlin recalled the feeling he had during the battle. This is a feeling caused by the force of his own attribute. The earth, for ordinary living beings, represents the nurturing of all things and is endless. It is an extremely great thing, and it can also be said to be the pinnacle of matter. The Taichu continent is boundlessly vast, and there are countless planets in the realm of stars. All of these things are essentially earth. No matter what kind of living being it is, it will always feel small and insignificant in the face of an existence that represents all matter. Enlin heaped praise upon the heavenly earth god before suddenly changing the subject. However, it actually has a limit. Or rather, the heavenly earth god does have a limit. The heavenly earth god is being restricted by the will of the heavenly Tao, so he can only unleash very little power. This gives me an opening. After fusing the power of the 5 elements with the power of heaven crushing, I can break through his defenses. Furthermore, I still have many trump cards that I haven't used yet, so I have at least a 10% chance of winning in a battle to the death. Little Xiaolan's lips twitched upon hearing this. You've prepared for so long, but you only have a 10% chance of winning in the end? Don't underestimate paramount heavenly gods. They are terrifyingly powerful. I tried to bite a chunk of flesh off the heavenly earth god's body, but I was unable to do so. Why do you want to bite his flesh? I want to see what the flesh of a paramount heavenly god tastes like. You'll become more powerful if you eat it, right? Little Xiaolan, you're so smart. How am I supposed to respond to that? Next time, I'll be responsible for cutting the flesh off, and you'll be responsible for eating it. Little Xiaolan patted her chest in a domineering manner. Enlin was stunned by the sight of this green-clothed girl. The moonlight shone down on the girl's immature and flawless face, which glowed with a mesmerizing jade-like luster. Give me a kiss, little Xiaolan, Enlin said. You. Little Xiaolan was a little hesitant. Then kiss my cheek, Enlin replied with a smile. Soon, Enlin detected a fragrant scent wafting toward him. Enlin kissed little Xiaolan's cheek in return, and a blush appeared on her cheeks. Enlin was extremely tempted by this. Little Xiaolan's body had become smaller, but why did it seem like she had also become more shy? In the past, she wouldn't even panic when kissing him. Just as he was thinking this, his hand was suddenly gripped by a pair of soft, warm hands. Enlin raised his head to discover that little Xiaolan was looking at him with a serious expression on her face. Enlin, I want to grow up quickly so I can marry you. Little Xiaolan's pink lips parted as she spoke. Her pleasant voice reverberated by Lin's ears, sending ripples through his heart. Little Xiaolan had confessed to him. What a special feeling! Why did he feel like he was a child bride? Lin felt like a door to a whole new world was slowly opening before him. Little Xiaolan, when are you going to grow up? Lin asked with a hint of anticipation in his eyes. I don't know. When I completely grow up will most likely be when the vermilion bird heart essence is completely repaired and completely fuses with me. Little Xiaolan supported her chin with a contemplative expression. Little Xiaolan was extremely adorable when she was deep in thought. Lin couldn't help but rub little Xiaolan's soft cheek. Little Xiaolan's beauty wasn't to the point where she could mesmerize all living beings, but her cheeks were extraordinarily smooth to the touch. Little Xiaolan slapped Lin's hand away with a disdainful expression. If you want to rub your face, go find little Xie. Little Xie will tell me to piss off, Lin replied. Little Xiaolan, piss off. Lin blinked. All right. The moon was very beautiful. The two of them chatted for a long time before going back to rest late at night. The first rays of dawn appeared. Lin was meditating. The door to his room was gently pushed open. Immediately afterward, a familiar fragrance wafted through the air. Here's a good morning kiss. A sweet, pleasant voice sounded. Lin opened his eyes, and his expression gradually became sluggish. A beautiful and pure young girl was blinking her limpid autumn eyes, looking at him with a sweet smile. She wore a snowy white dress, and her figure was tall and slender. Her long, black hair fell to her waist, and her translucent skin glowed like ivory under the morning light. Her smile was brimming with youthfulness. The young woman was very pleased with herself upon seeing Lin's astonished expression, and a mischievous smile appeared on her face. 15-year-old Xiaolan, good morning to you. Her voice was as pleasant and light as the most beautiful heavenly music. Thump! Lin's heart convulsed. Crap, this was the feeling of falling in love. Chapter 1976. Lin felt like there was a celestial maiden standing before him. She had a flawless figure, flawless features, and a pair of eyes that were as clear as a spring. She was peerlessly beautiful, pure, and flawless. The aura of youth wafted toward him. Lin, a man in his 20s, was tempted. She was full of vigor and invincibility. Look at you. Do you really have to be like this? Have you never seen a beautiful woman before? Su Xiaolan couldn't help but grumble at Lin's scorching gaze. Lin blushed as he coughed dryly. According to the customs of the Kingdom of the Nine States, a 15-year-old girl should be able to get married, right? Su Xiaolan faltered slightly before a blush appeared on her face. Tui! Pervert! Su Xiaolan grumbled before turning to leave. Hey, don't go. You don't have to get married. Lin immediately gave chase. Let's be friends. Within the white nectar sea. At the summit of the divine tree. A woman with long green hair plucked a vibrant flower that was imbued with divine power and placed it into her mouth before chewing lightly. Delicious. A little bird flew to her side before speaking in a crisp voice. Life, Nuwa has already progressed to the third stage of her mending of the heavens. Will we run out of time? If she succeeds, all of us heavenly gods will perish. A faint smile appeared on the woman's face as she shook her head. This woman was none other than one of the 6 paramount heavenly gods, the heavenly life goddess. Don't panic. Nuwa has a prerequisite for her mending of the heavens, and she has no chance of accomplishing it now. Otherwise, earth and light would have already lost their patience. The heavenly life goddess smiled. The little bird nodded, then looked at the giant colored egg hanging with countless vines under a tree branch and asked curiously, What are you making? The woman stroked the colorful eggshell, and even the little bird was struck by an indescribable sense of fear. This is the perfect life form. It is my masterpiece. The heavenly life goddess smiled. I'm really looking forward to its birth. What will it look like? How powerful will it be? Will it be able to sweep away all obstacles before us, Little Bird said in a deep voice, "Don't create something that you can't control." The heavenly life god's orange eyes lit up, and a faint smile appeared on her face. The essence of life has always been uncontrollable. Otherwise, where do you think the transcendent beings came from? Life represents infinite possibilities. Even if I created an ant, it would still be uncontrollable. The little bird was silent for a moment before saying, "The probability is different." The heavenly life goddess shook her head. "The probability is different, but the meaning is the same." "I don't understand," the little bird said. The heavenly life goddess tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and looked up at the starry sky before spreading open her slender arms with a smile on her face. "They all represent reality and hope. They are the most beautiful things in the world. Since the symbolism is the same, why not create ants instead of perfect life forms?" The little bird asked. "Are you stupid? How am I supposed to fight Enlin by creating ants?" The heavenly life goddess snapped. "Little bird, wait, why do I feel like I've stumbled into a dead end?" However, Enlin's combat prowess is already comparable to the heavenly earth god in his normal state, and he killed the heavenly emotion goddess right in front of the heavenly earth god. Haha, even I feel bad for the heavenly earth god. I'm really looking forward to when they fight to the death. The heavenly life goddess's eyes were filled with anticipation. His combat prowess is indeed very powerful. It's a pleasant surprise. The little bird nodded. "By the way, how is the heavenly sea god doing? Did he really agree to join us?" the heavenly life goddess asked. The little bird chirped, "That's right. He's hiding his true strength very well, but he is indeed leaning toward us and has agreed to cooperate with us to destroy light and earth." Hee. The heavenly life goddess chuckled. "Stupid light and earth. They don't even know which side the heavenly sea is leaning toward. I'm really looking forward to seeing their expressions when they discover that the heavenly sea has betrayed them." The heavenly sea is an out-and-out destroyer. He believes that the ocean can nurture and reproduce everything, and he looks down on all living beings on the Tai Chu continent. The little bird said in an indifferent voice, "That's the way it should be. This false world must be restarted. All life forms must be purified in order to usher in a new dawn." The heavenly life goddess spoke in a firm voice. "Heavenly sea, when did he say he's going to act? I can't wait any longer." The woman was itching to go. "There's no hurry. He said he's going to act when the final battle begins," the little bird replied. The woman stroked the huge, colorful egg, and a hint of a smile appeared on her face. "Just wait a little longer. You'll be able to come out very soon." Enlin was currently sitting with a young woman under the moonlight. Young Orchid was at the age where she was experiencing her first awakening of love. Her performance could be said to be very inexperienced, and even Enlin's teasing would cause a faint blush to appear on her face. Enlin was actually quite perplexed. He had once asked her if she had only become younger in appearance, but why had her personality become like young Orchid as well? Su Xiaolan replied with a blush on her face. This was the result of nature, and Enlin was completely baffled by her explanation. However, this wasn't a big issue. To put it more accurately, he really liked Enlin. Enlin took young Orchid with him to admire all of the flowers in Yutong City and take her to eat all of the delicious food in the city. "My God, look over there! Who is Enlin shopping with?" They're holding hands and walking into the White Jade Seafood Restaurant. Groups of Light Wing Clan female students on the streets whispered to each other. "Wow! That girl is so beautiful! She's even more beautiful than our Archangel. Is that the point? What about our Divine Phoenix Maiden? Is Enlin cheating on Big Sister Xiaolan?" A Light Wing Clan female student asked. Big Sister Xiaolan has become a lowly. It's not a bad idea for Big Boss Enlin to interact with other female students. Some of the female students were quite open-minded. The Light Wing Clan were all superstars, and they loved to gossip about celebrities. In their eyes, Enlin was the biggest celebrity, and the gossip about him could be described as earth-shattering. Just as all of the female cultivators were in a frenzy of gossip, news of Enlin cheating on Xiaolan spread like wildfire in the Lightwing clan's inner circle. Finally, this news reached the ears of the 6 vermilion bird sages. Within the seafood restaurant, Su Xiaolan and Enlin were currently enjoying the seafood delicacies as they chatted merrily with one another. A voice transmission talisman suddenly flashed. Young Orchid picked up the voice transmission talisman, upon which Vermilion Bird Nan Li's enraged voice sounded. "Great Empress Vermilion Bird, you've been cheated on by Enlin." Vermilion Bird Nanli was enraged. Su Xiaolan. Enlin was eating a delicious prawn when the prawn skin fell off the table. Young Orchid's face convulsed slightly, but she still maintained her composure. "What is it? Tell me slowly. How did I get cheated on by Enlin?" Someone discovered that Enlin went shopping with an extremely beautiful young woman in a white dress today. Several Lightwing clan female students witnessed this. Vermilion Bird Nanli was enraged. "Su Xiaolan. Enlin, that young woman is around 1.68 meters tall, has waist-length hair, a red jade hairpin, and a crimson bracelet on her wrist." Su Xiaolan was speechless. "That seems to be the case. Do you want us to secretly burn her?" Vermilion Bird Nanli was filled with righteous indignation. Hee. Su Xiaolan's lips twitched. She suddenly felt like this was absurd. F***ck in this day and age, anything could happen. I've cheated on myself? Chapter 1977. Great Empress Vermilion Bird, just give the command and we'll burn that woman. Lowly trash like her deserves to be purified by holy flames. Vermilion Bird Nanli roared with rage. Pfff. Enlin couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of spicy crayfish. Teenage Xiaolan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Was he scolding her right in front of her and threatening to burn her? What kind of expression was she putting on when she had such a loyal C** in T? "Alright, let's stop here." Teenage Xiaolan snapped. "Why do we have to stop? You can't just give in. Otherwise, you'll be cuckolded even more times." Vermilion Bird Nanli spoke with a pained expression. "Hee, I'm the woman in the white dress you're talking about." Teenage Xiaolan chuckled coldly. What? Vermilion Bird Nanli stuttered, as if it had received an extremely heavy blow. Slap. Teenage Xiaolan ended the voice transmission. Enlin couldn't help but burst into laughter at the sight of the enraged teenage Xiaolan. "What are you laughing at?" Teenage Xiaolan glared at Enlin as she pursed her lips. "Don't be angry. The misunderstanding has been resolved. Let's eat seafood." Enlin smiled as he placed some food onto teenage Xiaolan's plate. Su Xiaolan was now in her youthful form, and her beauty was tinged with a hint of playfulness and liveliness. She was very different from her Lolita appearance in the past, so it was no wonder that people would mistake her for her. Who would have thought that a Lolita would turn out to be a teenage Xiaolan? Enlin and Su Xiaolan continued to live happily ever after. Vermilion Bird Nanli personally stepped forward to clarify the rumors and declared that the beautiful woman in the white dress was their great Empress Vermilion Bird. This created quite a stir in Yutong City. Of course, these things did not affect the two protagonists at all. They continued to play and eat as they should, like an immortal couple, very happy and happy. They didn't have to fight so they could live happily. This was their attitude. Their divine sense could encompass an area with a radius of over 5,000 kilometers. This was the best type of human-shaped surveillance platform. No matter what their enemies were planning to do, they could accurately detect them. Skirmishes were completely meaningless now. The next battle was very likely to be the decisive battle. What to do before the final battle? Of course, it was to adjust his state. That was what Enlin and Su Xiaolan did. Enlin held Maidenland's small hand. Her hand is so smooth and tender. After walking for a while, he couldn't help but hug Maidenland's slender waist. Not only was her waist very thin, but it was also very elastic. Not only was it warm, but it also had a faint fragrance, and Lin danced with joy, and then was patted lightly by Maiden Lon. Her clear eyes glared at the man beside her with a warning look, and Lin immediately became obedient. Actually, it's not bad now. One must know when to be content. Happy days always pass quickly. Unknowingly, 3 beautiful days had passed. The prismatic thumb-sized crystal that Lin carried with him suddenly lit up. He was surprised at first, but then he laughed. There was finally news from the Heavenly Sea God. This crystal was the Heavenly Sea God's heart clone. Using it to communicate could avoid detection from the paramount heavenly gods, and it was a top-secret method of communication. And Lin immediately injected his consciousness into the prismatic crystal. Mr. Lin, sorry to keep you waiting. A boundless voice sounded in his mind. Mr. Sea God, you didn't keep me waiting. You even appeared on the Tai Chu continent before our agreed time. And Lin transmitted his voice to the Heavenly Sea God. I do need to explain this to you. The Heavenly Sea God said, even though I came out of seclusion early, I didn't harm anyone on our side. And Lin's lips twitched. Then what's going on with the various natural disasters in the West Sea? Those are all extravagant displays. If I don't do something like that, the other paramount heavenly gods will become suspicious of me, the Heavenly Sea God said in a resigned voice. And Lin thought about it for a moment. It really did seem like extravagant displays were necessary for a boss to make an appearance. This was a convention. When did such a **Ketup convention start? And Lin was still very displeased with the Heavenly Sea God's actions, but he knew that this was not the time to be bickering about these things. There were more important things that he had to take care of. The reason why I descended early is because Nuwa's mending of the heavens has reached the 3rd stage, and the heavenly Tao barrier is becoming more and more solid. If I don't descend to the Tai Chu continent now, I'm afraid I won't be able to do so anymore. The Heavenly Sea God sighed. And Lin's expression shifted slightly. What's the 3rd stage of mending the heavens? Don't you know Nuwa? You don't even know this? The Heavenly Sea God was a little surprised. I didn't ask. An awkward expression appeared on Lin's face. She didn't tell you either? The Heavenly Sea God was shocked. And Lin heaved a faint sigh. She only told me about this after I joined the Heaven Mending sect. The Heavenly Sea God immediately replied, then join. But I don't want to be bound by any power, and I don't want to do things that I don't want to do. I feel like it's a trap. And Lin voiced his thoughts. Are you stupid? The Heavenly Sea God was exasperated. Join and enjoy your power first. As for whether or not you want to fulfill your obligations, that's all up to you. You're not weak anymore, so who can force you to do something if you don't want to? If worst comes to worst, you can just join a power and get a free meal before leaving. What's so difficult about that? And Lin's mouth gaped open in astonishment. How could he be so shameless? He couldn't believe that this was coming from the Heavenly Sea God's mouth. He was a paramount heavenly god, so why was he spouting nonsense like a scoundrel? Did he have no shame? Did he have no dignity? Did he have no dignity as a paramount heavenly god? That's a good idea. And Lin nodded. A gratified smile appeared on the Heavenly Sea God's face. You've finally been enlightened. In the past, you would do anything to achieve your goals. You were as evil as you could get. Don't slander me. I'm Lin now, and I'm a mighty, righteous man. And Lin spoke with a firm expression. Yes, you're right, the Heavenly Sea God replied. Aren't we getting off topic? What's the 3rd stage of Nuwa's mending of the heavens? And Lin suddenly thought of something important. The Heavenly Sea God replied, the 3rd stage is to establish a structure to mend the flaws in the heavenly Tao. Only with a skeleton can one develop flesh and blood. Once the structure is complete, the heavenly Tao will be further perfected, and the barrier will become more resolute. If I don't enter the Tai Chu continent now, I'm afraid that I'll really be stuck outside, so I entered the Tai Chu continent ahead of time. However, Entering the Tai Chu continent ahead of time also inflicted severe injuries upon me, and I'll need time to recover. Unlin was a little astonished. This nuwas mending of the heavens was quite impressive. To think that a paramount heavenly god would almost be unable to enter the Tai Chu continent. Wouldn't it be much better than crushing the heavens? Unlin thought to himself for a moment before asking, "How long will it take for you to recover? Are we going to wait for you to recover before we act?" The heavenly sea god replied, "There's no need for that. Let me tell you some good news. I've successfully established contact with the heavenly life goddess and the heavenly heaven god, and I'll pretend to be working with them to deal with light and earth. When the time comes, we'll find an opportunity to betray them and kill the 4 paramount heavenly gods, Unlin. Chapter 1978. Unlin was once again astonished by the heavenly sea god's actions. What was going on? Was this going to be a show? On the surface, the heavenly sea god was on the same side as light and earth, but now he was on the same side as life and sky. However, that was also fake. The heavenly sea god had actually formed an alliance with him? A 3-way battle? The heavenly sea god was going to fly? Unlin didn't know what to say for a moment. "Do you have a detailed plan?" Unlin asked. The heavenly sea god replied, "The heaven-crushing sect is about to launch an all-out attack. When that time comes, the situation will be extremely unpredictable. All we can do is play it by ear." Unlin, play it by ear? Was this King Brainless plan? The heaven-mending sect has already progressed to the 3rd stage of mending the heavens, so why aren't you stopping her? Unlin was perplexed. Mending the heavens is in accordance with the heavenly Tao. If we attack Nuwa, we will suffer a backlash from the heavenly Tao. The heavenly sea god was speechless. Why don't you know anything? Why are you living like an idiot? Unlin wore an awkward expression. That's not what I'm after. I'm after freedom and freedom. After all, the more I know, the more karma I'll have to bear. Then why are you asking me these questions now? Aren't you contradicting yourself? The heavenly sea god asked with a smile. Because I want to take responsibility, Unlin replied. The heavenly sea god fell silent for a moment. By the way, Brother C, are you free right now? Unlin asked. What do you mean? I'll do my best to help you. The heavenly sea god didn't like to beat around the bush, so he cut to the chase. Unlin was ecstatic to hear this. Can you let me have a bite? The heavenly sea god's heart jolted. What do you mean? That's exactly what it means. Let me take a bite of your flesh, and I'll become more powerful after eating your flesh. Just a small bite, and you'll be able to obtain an even more powerful companion. Unlin explained patiently. That's right, the condition for him to progress to the Tao integration stage was to eat the flesh of a paramount heavenly god. This condition appeared to be super difficult to achieve, but don't forget that he had Brother Hai. The heavenly sea god was also a paramount heavenly god. The heavenly sea god was dumbstruck for over 10 seconds. If you're my brother, then let me bite you, Unlin said anxiously. The heavenly sea god coughed lightly. I think I know what's going on now. You're trying to absorb the essence of a paramount heavenly god to unlock the power of darkness within your body, right? Unlin blinked, and he suddenly felt like he had been enlightened. However, it's true that I've been injured. If I also injure my essence, it'll be an irreversible blow to me, and it might even affect my ability to become a complete heavenly Tao. So, I'm really sorry, the heavenly sea god said in a dejected voice. I see. All right then. Unlin was also very disappointed, but there was nothing he could do. Something like this had to be consensual. If the heavenly sea god couldn't do it, then there was nothing he could do. Don't worry, I'll help you slice off the flesh of the other paramount heavenly gods, the heavenly sea god promised with an earnest expression. Unlin was a little taken aback. Why did these words sound so familiar? I'll contact you when I have a plan. I can use the excuse that I'm still recovering from the backlash as an excuse, but my subordinates have to fight. Tell Lan Xiaoni to send some unimportant troops to fight against the Western Heavenly Gate army. Don't be too harmonious, that would be too fake, the Heavenly Sea God said. He had decided to put on an act, so he had to put on a good show. Enlin naturally understood this, and he nodded in agreement. Thus, both sides ended the call. Enlin looked up into the sky with complex emotions. He was originally just a nobody, an ordinary person who wanted to live a peaceful and stable life. However, before he knew it, even though he had tried his best to avoid the vortex of battle, he had still found himself at the center of the vortex in the end. There were some things that he had no choice in. He was bound to too many people, and too many people had made their way into his heart, all of whom he wanted to protect. The heavenly gods wanted to destroy the human race and kill his friends and brothers, so how could he just stand by and do nothing? He couldn't just stand by and do nothing. Seeing as that was the case, he might as well step into the center of the vortex instead. He would fight against the most powerful enemy and turn the world upside down. Enlin understood what he was really thinking, and his eyes became clearer and more determined. Enlin, it's time to eat. I've made some delicious food for you today. A young woman's pleasant voice sounded from outside the door. I'm coming. Enlin smiled gently and quickly walked out of the door. Although Su Xiaolan was a young woman now, she still had a strong point, and that was that she loved to study food and cook delicious food for Enlin. During the past few days, they had tasted all the delicacies in Yutong City, and Su Xiaolan had gained some inspiration for cooking. She could not wait to drag Enlin into an experiment. Enlin was also happy to do so. After all, Su Xiaolan had the foundation of a cooking god, so no matter how she prepared the dish, it would definitely be delicious. Enlin came to the dining table with anticipation, and his expression gradually became blank as he looked at the delicacies on the table. What is this? Enlin's eyes widened. This is a dish that I've been inspired to cook, Su Xiaolan said with a smile. A rich green color surged on the table. All kinds of green vegetables and spirit materials released a dazzling green light, illuminating his vision. Everywhere he looked, he saw green mountains and clear waters. It was an extremely natural environment. Heart of green vine, treasure ocean octopus, 9 heavens green grass, green hippopotamus, treasure spirit green fungus. All of the dishes looked very delicious, but they were all green in color, and when they were gathered together, they created an extremely strange scene that made Enlin's legs turn to jelly. Just imagine, a table that was completely green, and it was glowing with a green light. Isn't this a little too green? Enlin's voice trembled. Su Xiaolan blinked as she tapped her chin with her finger. It's all right. Green represents environmental protection and health, so it's all right to be green. It's also a special feature. Enlin was very flustered. Xiaolan, have you been traumatized? A faint smile appeared on Teenage Lan's face. No, it's just that I suddenly had an epiphany when I cuckolded myself last time, and I felt like I could make a green dish for myself to taste. This is the crystallization of my inspiration. Enlin's lips twitched. This was not the crystallization of inspiration, this was a landslide of inspiration. Come, Enlin, it's time to drink your medicine. This is green dance grass soup. It can relieve a day of exhaustion and nourish your stomach. Teenage Lan brought a bowl of green soup to Enlin's mouth in a thoughtful manner.